Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale, and I believe I have everyone here this week that was also present on the podcast last week. Let's go through them. Joining us once again is Colin Black.
You know, I really wanted to have it be another year between podcasts, but, you know, they begged, so I came.
Yeah, we enjoy your presence too much, so now you're stuck.
No, now I feel bad for my joke.
Now we have Josh Torres.
Happy birthday, Chow Min Moon. Happy belated birthday, Babylon's Fall.
Yeah. God, the worst game of all time to release next to my birthday. Isn't this great?
It's the biggest release of the week.
Massive W. Happy birthday.
You heard his voice just now. That's Chow Min Woo. We also have Adam Vitale.
It's also, he doesn't jump on the podcast like ever, but it's also like CD's birthday like 2 days ago.
Happy birthday, Alex Seedhouse.
Oh, fuck. I got to wish him a happy birthday.
Wow, it's just everyone's birthday.
Alex Seedhouse is a very close friend of ours on RPG Site. He's a writer for and founder of Nintendo Insider.
I guess yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
We're recording this on Saturday if you want to actually line up these birthdays and be creepy about it. And anyways,
I'll tell you a secret. A lot of our staff is born in March for some reason.
Wait, are you telling that CD has the same birthday as Babylon's Fall, like the real release date of Babylon?
What an honor!
Oh,
and even Andrea's birthday is somewhere in March too. So we're all born in March.
Yeah, a lot of March babies.
And finally, we have James Galizio.
Was he born in March?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I was born in January.
Oh,
must be the first belated birthday. 2 months late. Sorry, James.
So obviously it's been another busy week for RPGs. It is that busy time of year that we've kind of been looking forward to for a while. It is the time of year and then Elden Ring happened. I know we've talked about Elden Ring a few times on the podcast because we did the review kind of issue of the podcast 2 weeks ago. And then last week we had the first time that a lot of the other people have been able to play it upon release. So I'm certain that we'll have some time earmarked for more Elden Ring discussion later in this podcast. We'll try to keep it spoiler light. We'll talk about like early game mechanics, maybe some early area bosses. Won't go deep off the deep end into like spoiler territory in terms of how the game ends or what the endings look like or the later areas. But we also had a new release for this week in the RPG space, one that was actually voted our most anticipated for the year somehow. Do you know what that was?
Babylon's Fall.
Babylon's Fall, everybody. Let's go, Babylon fans.
Let's go!
Let's go.
Right.
Break free Babylon's Fall.
So the answer was not Babylon's Fall, but that game did release yesterday, and we did not get, despite, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but despite asking for it, we did not get early access.
No, and I don't think a lot of places did. I've seen more reviews pop up recently, but they did not give out a lot of code for it.
Now, obviously, getting early access is not a requisite. Plenty of us across, the staff here have written reviews or done, coverage of games that we've just purchased and played ourselves. But that has not happened for Babylon's Fall, at least not yet. Doesn't mean it won't. But the game that actually released this week that was our most anticipated and it kind of surprised me to realize that was the case, is Triangle Strategy, which I kind of knew was releasing in March. And it's like, oh yeah, it's already March somehow. And oh yeah, that game is out. So we did put up a review on the site that was written by Colin Black. That is why we wrangled him into showing up on this podcast again. And I
Sandwich
do know
in mouth just ripped me off my couch. It was quite funny.
Yeah, all of a sudden we just inundate him with notifications like, hey, Colin, you should join the podcast. And I know that Josh has also been playing it for at least a little bit. And I think other of us have had an expressed interest in Triangle Strategy, but it is just in the wake of Elden Ring, and that can be difficult. And I know I want to make time for it. I know that I think I know that Adam wants to make time for it. But
waiting for at least PC version.
Oh, right, that's what you were waiting for, because just wait 6 months and it'll show up on PC for some reason, and then it'll show up on PlayStation or on Xbox, and then never on PlayStation.
It'll just randomly show up on Game Pass one day. Here it is.
All right, so Triangle Strategy, we'll just dive right in. So I played the initial demo, or was it even called a demo? It was like I don't want to say stress test. It was a thing from like a year ago where you played like chapter 6 and 7.
I think it was called a demo. Was it the debut demo? I forget the name. I'm pretty sure it was called a demo.
But then there was a more recent demo that was chapters 1 through 3 that actually carried progress.
Yeah, the prologue demo.
Right. But now the game's fully released. And I guess I'll just hand it off to Cullen to start out, because you were the one that obviously wrote up the review for us. So, Cullen, I guess triangle strategy. I don't know what you should start with. Like, what are you someone who has played a lot of the strategy RPGs that this game is sort of built in the image
strategy? Of? Good. That's
all right.
it.
You can go now.
But no. So I like to call myself like a casual enthusiast when it comes to these kind of games. I really love like Final Fantasy Tactics. I got to the last chapter and I didn't beat it. Big fan of Tactics Ogre. Couldn't get past the first chapter. Like I like strategy games. I like strategy games a lot. It's just hard for them to really like grab me entirely. Like the gameplay, everything has to be firing off same cylinders. Everything has to just work for me. So I knew what this was kind of trying to ape off of. And like I was familiar with it. I know a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, don't compare it to Final Fantasy Tactics," but I feel like they're inviting the comparison. Like I don't know.
When Square Enix hasn't made a strategy game like this in like 10 years or more, and it's like, come on, yeah, it's inviting the comparison.
Like they're literally trying to do that. Like I don't know. Like Josh, how much have you played?
About 10 hours so far. Okay. So I'm basically up to the point where that initial demo, that Brian played, but like I wasn't expecting that the lead up to that time and that demo would be so long, and like I feel like the first impressions of this game will really turn off a lot of like people who want gameplay out of it at first, because it takes a long time to actually get to like the game itself. Like within like the first 3 to 4 hours, I want to say I only did like maybe 2 to 3 battles, and one of them was obviously the tutorial battle at the very beginning. And then, but there's just a lot of story setup, and like it's very long-winded about the way like it sets itself up, because obviously there's these 3 nations that are at peace, and then they have to like give an excuse of like the events that led up to like why they're warring each other again. And that they spend a lot of time like, okay, there's the state of the world, everyone's happy, and then like you have to wait for a certain like event early on in the game to like spark off that like, oh, okay, they're at conflict again.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of the previews, or like not previews. I've read Cullen's review, but I haven't read watched streamers or whatever. So and I've heard some people saying that like the ratio of dialogue to battles is like 90-10. Is that like really true, or are people exaggerating?
I'd say generously 80-20.
Jesus,
but that's being generous. It is.
I saw one review say 85-15.
Oh, so it's somewhere in between. So we got the boundaries.
Yeah.
So, the thing is telling me, man. Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say, so you're telling me this is the golden sun of strategy RPGs, where people just ramble all day for the most.
You have to add an emoji after every sentence if it wants to be like golden sun.
It's like now we were comparing Final Fantasy Tactics. How about how we compared to
and like it's like I don't really like I like story in games, so I don't really mind like it having a lot of story cutscenes. And like it will highly depend. Like this game lives and dies by like, are you
invested in the story?
Yeah, are you invested in the story? Are you invested in the characters and what's happening? Because if it doesn't like, if you're not interested in that, then like this game will feel like a drag if you're not into that. It's one of those things like you can certainly skip the story and just get to the battles, but it feels like a means to an end at a certain point.
This is one of those games where it's like if you are just looking to skip straight into battles, I feel like you should play a different strategy game. Like not saying that you can't play it if you don't experience the story, because I don't think the story is perfect, but this is really the story they focused a lot on the story, and they're putting a lot of weight on your enjoyment in the story, even if the mechanics themselves are very strong. But one of the problems, and I wasn't able to talk about this in my review, even though I don't really think it's a spoiler, it's more of a mechanic thing. This is trying to do a lot of like Tactics and Tactics Ogre, but in Tactics Ogre, they also did like a really big branching narrative, but you had a flowchart you can jump around node events to kind of make different choices, and it helped a lot. And the PSP version, of course, before someone corrects me. I know one of you guys was thinking about it. But like you could jump around and then make things easier. But
yeah, the world system is great.
Triangle strategy does not have that. If you want to go through again and make different choices, you either have to save a lot and reload old saves, or play through the entire game again.
Now, in terms of the story bit, I just want to like clarify. So I haven't played the game, but I like read Polygon's review, and Polygon is basically saying like it's not necessarily the number or length of cutscenes that's necessarily the problem inherently. It's more that they felt it was just like extraneous, kind of like going way too much into the exposition side of things, or just like beating it over your head in terms of this is what's going on and this is what's happening, and like not their words, like not trusting the player to kind of like understand what's happening, so they kind of have to like over explain it. And then another review I read also like kind of more jokingly called it "oops, all exposition," and that's the part that kind of concerns me a little bit. Is it just like maybe, I don't know, does it like repeat itself? Does it?
I don't really understand like the narrator in this game is I don't know why there's a narrator in this game, to be honest.
There should be.
Because the all the narrator really does at this point is like a story cutscene plays out, and right after that story cutscene it goes to the overview map, and then the narrator basically like gives like a Sparks Notes version of what happened in the story scene. It's like, it's okay, you could like people are supposed to be like, people should have been paying attention to what happened in that cutscene. You don't have to like reiterate what happened in that cutscene in 2 to 3 sentences. It just happened. It's not like a flashback or anything. So it is very long-winded in that aspect, and that's why I wonder what this game looks like and is more structured if it didn't have a narrator in the first place.
So I'm not like against long cutscenes or even a lot of dialogue, but I have to be like compelled by it. And if it's just like, here is the same 3 plot beats and one like thematic element repeated 4 times before you get to the next chapter, I could see that really getting like long on the tooth, and you're just like, oh, let me play.
I never felt it got repetitive, but I can definitely see why some people might think it's long-winded. Especially like, I never thought the game got too expository besides the narrator. I thought that was, again, unnecessary. But it's really just that there's so much, and if you really get invested in this game and you're like playing a whole ton like right away, that story is going to burn you out because you're just like, I just want to play the game.
That's how I felt in the first like 4 hours of the game. Like, ever, I kind of had to like pace myself because like I just want to like get to the meat of it, but there's a lot of like build up to it. I'm like, okay. All right, okay. I wasn't skipping anything because I really want to like try to get into the story, and like it's fine so far for where I'm at, and finally gives context to that first initial demo, so you kind of get a better sense of like, oh, okay, these are the characters of the other nations, and you kind of get perspectives on like perspectives on like everyone essentially on what's happening with this situation, and that's neat, but there's a certain point where I wish it was a bit more poignant in certain aspects. Especially with that build up, because you don't have to like repeat that like, yes, there was a war between salt and iron. This nation has iron resources. This nation has salt resources, and they like reiterate that at least like 4 to 5 times, and like within the first few hours. It's like I get it. It's okay. I'm sure I can connect these dots.
Like, I don't think having too much exposition is a problem. The problem is you ramble on to repeated topics. Like, as a friend of mine mentioned, there was like this very part, the dialogue just kind of sound like, hey, you're kind of brave. It's like, oh wait, I am sort of brave. And it just kind of like repeats it on for like 10 minutes or something. That's how she explained it. It was sound like very bad.
I think that the other thing that I have an issue with, it's like, it's very not subtle at all about like who is like a bad person and who is a good person in this game. Like, the character designs kind of just like spoil everything of like there's no subtlety behind these characters.
Rolling mustache evil.
Yeah. You just see like their characters like, oh, this person must be a douchebag. This person must be a conniving son of a bitch. This person
is pretty
cold. Yeah,
They must not be bad.
So And with that as well, that kind of goes into the morality stuff I was talking about in my review, where I think the game thinks it's smarter than it is, where it's trying to bring up these like deep philosophical like moral dilemmas, and it's like, oh, now human rights might be cool, but what if we could get an edge in the battle? It's like, that's not a choice.
Maybe slavery is good.
Maybe slavery is, maybe that's a necessary evil. It's like, no, it's not.
And don't they have it where it's like, based on your review, I wrote a pretty glowing, honestly, preview based on the chapters 6 and 7 demo, because I thought it was just really cool that based on the choice that you made in chapter 6, you go to a completely different chapter 7. And I just thought the idea of that was pretty profound. But the two things that you've mentioned kind of damper my excitement a bit. The fact that there's no easy or convenient way to like check out all the different permutations. I have to like know where the branches are and like make deliberate saves and be like, all right, here's my chapter 6 branching point or whatever.
So you'll always know about branches because of every voting the only way the story branches is during the voting sections. So if you save before there, you're good. But so the weirdest thing, kind of like circling back a little bit, there is a flowchart. You can't use it in the way you'd want to, though.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's hidden in a menu. I only found out about it after I finished my first playthrough. When I went back and I was like, oh, War Chronicle, what's this? This looks new. And I got a tutorial of it and I was going through and I was like, oh no.
I looked at War Chronicle at the very beginning. It's like, oh, it's supposed to be like a summary of events that happened. Like, I didn't know there's gonna be a flowchart in it, but
yeah, there's a flowchart.
But even then, you can't interact with it. Then it's like, okay, well, thanks
What's
for
the point?
And yeah, like you mentioned, like the branching thing is probably not going to be as robust as you want it to, because it's only going to be like, oh, it's a different chapter for this chapter. Like at the very beginning, like you have like when the nations are still at peace, the nations being like Glenbrook, Hyzanti, and Ace Frost or whatever, and like there's this festival that happened to like kind of have the nations meet up about the incoming era of peace, and like there's this new mine happening. Mine operation in Glenbrook, and everyone's kind of taking part in it, and because whatever the fight is in it would be shared among like all of them. So as a sign of peace, like it kind of gives you your like the tutorial on the scales of conviction on like how this mechanic works, and you can either visit Hyzanti or Ace Frost at the very beginning, and you kind of try to convince everyone like, hey, we should go here or go to the other nation. And what you saw at the initial demo of like you can use like persuasion on the people who don't like agree with you, and like any keywords that you pick up like during like interacting with NPCs at a prior story cutscenes, they can be unlocked in there, and then they maybe that dialogue.
That's right, everyone. Manipulation is a mechanic in triangle strategy.
Yeah, so and then everyone will get to vote on where you go. And then, so, I went to Hyzant, but, you could have gone to the other nation. But either way, whatever happens there, obviously you'll have different events playing out, and whatever battles will happen.
So guess what?
What?
I don't know if you know this already. That doesn't matter.
Really? I thought if you go to Hyzant,
I was talking to CD.
Uh-huh.
I went to Hyzant.
Okay.
CD went to Ace Frost. The back half of the story does not change, to my knowledge.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like the you'll still have like the different like story cutscenes in it, and like battle there. But what happens after? Obviously, like that doesn't affect like Ace Frost invading Glenbrook, and that's not a spoiler. That happens in the first.
No, yeah, that's
what this sort of reminds me of. It reminds me of. Tell me if I'm wrong. It sort of reminds me of. Is it Fire Emblem 6, where you have like a choice where you can either go like to the north or to the Isles. And you change like 2 chapters or 3 chapters kind of in the middle of the game, but then it kind of reconverges on itself for the end.
Yeah, I think that was
it's just like I forget what the numbers are, but it's like chapter 15, chapter 16, chapter 17A, chapter 18A, and then chapter 19, and then there's a 17 and 18B. It's just like kind of like an alternate like branch, if you will, but it reconverges quickly.
And then like Sacred Stone is a similar thing where it's like you have a section in the middle based on which lord you picked or whatever.
Yeah, if you pick Erica or Ephraim, right?
And like But one of the weird things about the structure of the story is being as vague as possible. You need to go back to Hyzant later. And that seems like something that would only have worked if you went there at the beginning. Because in the Hyzant story, you're like familiarizing yourself with the characters. You're like getting to know them. You're creating bonds. And the story's like, I'm pretty sure there's even a thing that's like, hey, choose carefully. This could really change things. But if you go to Ace Frost, all the Hyzant stuff later in the game still happens.
Mm.
So, like, I need to go through a run still where I chose Ace Frost first and trying to see how that could actually change things. But
just
like
to be
when
clear, this
CD
Ace Frost Hyzant choice, we're not like spoiling anything, right? That's a
No,
prequel.
it's
that's
very
early
early.
in the game. Yeah.
Okay.
It's literally like, where do you want to go on vacation?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's that's not a big spoiler at all. But
that's like
it-
the
yeah,
first choice.
I do wonder like how malleable it gets. Like, because obviously it's not just those. It's obviously, like you were saying, there's a morality system, and I forgot the three moralities, like utility,
Morality and
and
liberty. Yeah.
liberty. Yeah, and then I wonder what exactly that what that affects in the end, because you choose a choice, and like it'll have like the scale logos glow and says, oh, Sereno's convictions have been strengthened, and you don't know where to what end. And then, like, there are definitely like tutorial pop-ups that say, oh, this could affect these, like, which some characters may join you depending on if you go down this route, but it never really surfaces that, and that's fine. But it makes me wonder how malleable it is, because everything kind of feels shallow at the moment.
I have
Now,
my
do you-
fears.
Do you eventually get all the characters, or do you like? It feels like if I looked at Josh's final file and Cullen's final file, that they would have a completely different roster.
They
They'd
said
be-
that characters are basically exclusive to certain decisions. So
I actually do kind of like that, but I don't know if they
mean-
renege on that and be like, at the end, you just get them later or something.
Side characters that you get, and I think some side characters only join you depending on your morality system, like whatever your morality values are. But New Game Plus, you can just carry over your whole party.
I actually kind of like
Oh.
that. I think I like the
Yeah.
idea of like, all right, you get these characters because you made these choices, but then if you do New Game Plus, you can kind of carry that and eventually end
Yeah.
up with like extra characters that you wouldn't have
yeah,
had
Tactics
already.
Ogre is like that, where like, for example, you can only get Ravnus if you go on the Law path, if I remember correctly. But then like if you roll back time and then go on to a Chaos path, you can bring Ravnus along. Like, doesn't make sense story wise, but she's a unit that you now already have. So
The biggest fear I have, and this is no confirmation. I'm not like, this is just an idea, is that the morale, like the values, it's going to do that SMT4 stuff where you need to have perfect, like, lined up of everything even to get like the secret true ending. And that
the
would
funny
be
thing about SMT4 is that like you can, if you try being too neutral, you can screw yourself out of it, because there are certain choices that you have to pick Law or Chaos, and it basically bumps you off neutral.
Yeah,
Anyway.
you have to become the best centrist in the universe to get that ending, and it sucks because it doesn't make
It's
you
actually
feel like.
I actually disagree that in order to get the true neutral ending in SMT4, you kind of have to like be Law at some points and Chaos at other points. And you kind of have to be like,
I forgot that. Wasn't there a
like
thing about
Two-Face.
that? Where if you just pick the first dialogue option and everything in SMT4, you get into the true neutral ending.
yeah, that's the thing. You have to kind of be like Law at some points and Chaos at some points, and then it balances each other out. If you try to be like
Well-
ambivalent or neutral, it doesn't work.
I
Well,
hope they
Adam, I'm
don't do the
talking
true
about a
ending.
realistic central, not
Yeah,
not the ideal centrist.
I'm just saying that SMT's neutrality
No,
route is a
yeah,
little bit
it's-
funny.
But yeah,
I
I mean,
just-
like, go for it.
Basically, I've only played the demo, but I really hope that Cullen's fear is unfounded, even though I can completely see it happening. A game where it's like you make choices and live with the consequences. By the way, if you make these exact choices, you get a better ending. It just seems like at odds with each other. So I hope they don't do that. But it seems like people and developers really like having like this is one thing that I really praise Three Houses for, is that it's doesn't have like this is the best option, or this is the canon option, or this is the option that gives you the extra chapter or whatever.
This is the
Where-
Muso option.
Yeah. And then yeah, hopefully that doesn't end up being like, here's the one where everyone's happy at the end.
I mean, I think they're hinting that, yeah.
Really? I'm not surprised, but I'm also like rolling my eyes at it.
Yeah, you just have to play. You just have to pay another $60 and a totally brand new battle system and everything to get the.
I can't wait. It's gonna be so
Awesome.
good. It's gonna be so good.
But I mean, the narrative structure and story, like worries aside, like the actual gameplay once you get to it and try to
Yeah, let's talk about
it's pretty
gameplay.
decent. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like Final Fantasy Tactics with a Final Fantasy Tactics with a Fire Emblem class system. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Fire Emblem class system, Final Fantasy Tactics inspired battles, and then Tactics Ogre physics.
Yeah, I already have recruited like this optional character, and like his whole gimmick is like he can play traps on the ground. And
I talked about him in my review. He's the best. He's the best character in that entire game.
Blacksmith?
Yeah,
Best as in a really neat character, or best as in this guy is busted.
Sure, he's neat, I guess. I don't remember his character arc. But one of the things that's really cool is that when you recruit party members, like, okay, let me back up a little bit. You have a little hub area you can go to where like your little encampment, and you'll talk to a bunch of different people who are like, and when you meet them at first, they'll say blacksmith or bartender or shopkeep. But then as you go on, you do a little character story with them, and then they join you, and then they get a name. So like this character who's literally only known as blacksmith ends up like wanting to join you, and his like name's like I don't know how they pronounce it. It's spelled it's like Ian's or something.
Oh,
Yen. It's not like Jan but anyway. So the blacksmith guy, you get him, and you're like, oh, okay, how are they gonna what are they gonna do with you? His whole gimmick is that he places traps around the map, and one of his traps, I think his main trap, you put it down and you choose the direction it points at, and if an enemy walks on it, it launches them a couple spaces away. Yeah. And you can use this to either launch them at other enemies. If you get it on like a perch, like I used him on a bridge on the bridge from the demo, that really long one that has like you can fall off it.
Yeah.
You launching people off the bridge?
Yeah, I was launching people off the bridge. And it was such a great strategy because they'll fall off and get stunned for a couple turns and lose a bunch of health. And he can also like spawn turrets.
I can't wait to get that ability. I'm trying to get him there.
He's slow. He has a slow movement speed, but he's one of the most creative and fun SRPG classes I have seen in a very long time.
He's pretty baller. And you can definitely up his movement speed. Like one of his like weapon like enhancement things. It's like you can either do like more jump or more movement speed on him, so you can sort of mitigate some of his issues. But he's pretty fun. And also like there's just something really funny about like choosing the direction where you fling people towards the traps. It just because there's like clash damage as well. So like if you fling them and they go into a thing, they'll do clash damage with that unit. And then since there's this whole mechanic of like you can set the ground like ablaze or like on frost and whatnot. So you can set like these obstacles on fire and then set a trap there. So if any people go on there, any enemy troops go on there, you can fling them into the fire instead.
Are classes fixed, or can you freely pick like Three Houses style, or how does that work?
Classes are set.
I actually really enjoy that. I kind of miss. I'm going to sound like, I don't know, Adam's phrase where he's just like a dinosaur yelling at a meteor. But I actually really like when strategy games have fixed or semi-fixed like class systems where it's like this character is a paladin or whatever, rather than the Three Houses style where it's like you can have all myrmidons if you want. I'd rather have a chessboard where it's like these are the units you get, you make do with what you got, rather than just like, oh, anyone can be any class, it doesn't matter, they're all just for flavor.
You have all queens.
So. Yeah. So I actually do kind of like when you say like this character, like this blacksmith does this thing and he's the only one that does it, or maybe I don't know if that's true, but I'd rather have that than just have like I want a little bit of structure and a little bit of boundaries that you have to work within rather than complete freedom, because I think when you have too much freedom it gets a bit boring.
Like in Fire Emblem Awakening, you want to make as many characters Dark Flyers as possible because that class
Right,
is completely busted.
yeah, like I'm imagining like it's interesting that we're bringing in more Fire Emblem comparisons now and fewer like Final Fantasy Tactics. Where imagine playing like the Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn, and just made everyone Wyvern Knights because those are busted, rather than having like the couple Wyvern Knights be really cool. Yeah, yeah, every character is now Har. So I actually really do like the fact that the classes are fixed. Does it feel like there's a good variety of classes, or kind of like, I don't know?
There's a decent variety. I know there's a couple people that overlap a little bit. You have like a couple healers, but they're different kinds of healers. But I'd say that there's a decent variety.
Like for example, like mages, like starting out mages, like you'll definitely have your fire mage and your ice mage, and then you'll have a mage that's kind of like the jack of all trades, where they can like cast like a spell of every element as he levels up, but he like loses like the utility of like, say, like the ice mage has like a wall of ice spell that he can do.
The demo.
Yep, and then but the jack of all trades person doesn't have that spell.
You have a weather mage.
Oh, that's sick! Actually, I didn't know that.
She's
yeah,
great.
I do remember that from the initial demo. That's right.
She's really cool.
Yeah, you got to get her. I like the dude that can steal TP. That character.
Yeah, he's good too. Like there's just a whole bunch of fun variety in the class you can make, and the best part about it is the way the level scaling works is if you have someone you haven't been leveling in ages, you bring them in your party on like a really high level map. Them doing just about anything that turn will get them a level until they kind of catch back up. So you don't have to spend hours grinding through your old group of characters. You could have someone just throw like an item, they'll get a level.
That's good. Like I love Tactics Ogre, but like one of its in my opinion, few flaws, it's like almost a fatal flaw, is that so in Tactics Ogre you level classes and not characters, if you remember correctly.
Yeah.
But like when you get a new class in that game, they start at level 1 and your other characters might be at like level 40. And then you literally have to like, all right, time to set aside, look at my watch, 2 hours to get my class caught up. There's a little bit of scaling in that game, but it's still just not.
It's not tuned well enough to make
weird.
it like
it's just
fun.
So that's one of the Tactics Ogre things. It's like, why is this like this? I love this game, but why? Anyway,
yeah. But like even early on, like I'm maybe almost 10 hours to the game, and I have like maybe 13 people on my group. But there's already a good variety with them. Like I just recruited this woman that is she's a healer of sorts, but she's more item focused. She's the item healer, so she has like the ability to like not have greater healing items, like they do more healing, but also she can like toss that healing towards them, so she has like ranged healing where she just like fucking hurls it at people.
Depending on the game, I've really come to like kind of item based classes, even though I think about that statement. And Elden Ring, I like never used items. I know it seems like a really weird comparison, but Elden Ring has like this full crafting system where you can create all these sorts of bombs.
I love the item characters, like the mixers, or even like Riku in Final Fantasy X is super fun. Right. And like I love the item characters. Like it's one of those things that if you're like a hoarder, you're like, no, I don't want to ever use items. But if you get over that,
is it bad that I'm 30 hours into Elden Ring and I haven't unlocked crafting?
I've seen a lot of people like totally just miss the item crafting kit at the very beginning.
Yeah, I have no idea where that is, and I just finally beat the first main boss in the game.
I mean, do you want to know where it is? It's not a big spoiler if you want to know where the item crafting kit is.
Sure, I'll probably forget it by the time.
It's a very first church that you see, like after like the first step. Thing, you just go up that path where the tree sentinel was, and then you just go past it to a little church, and then the merchant will have like, oh, here's an item crafting kit, go buy it off of me.
It's weird because that whole game is there's tons of different like recipe books and cookbooks that you get, but you can only get the item crafting tools at like one place, and then I think you get like a few other things. But anyways, what game was it?
I have to admit, this discussion on triangle strategies like gameplay is like making me more excited for it.
Like I said, once you get to like the actual game part, I think that part of the game is actually pretty compelling, and I'm really excited to see what sort of characters I'll like recruit as time goes on, because they've already shown a good variety of them, and they all have their uses in battle. Like
Yeah, I feel like
like
I feel like we did the game a disservice by starting off with like, here's all the average stuff about the story, and then like 15 minutes later saying, oh, here's the gameplay, which is actually quite good.
I mean, like, I know, like, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, some people just don't like it because it's not so serious, but I think on, like, the gameplay front, those games are great, except for maybe the law stuff.
I like the law stuff.
I just like the law stuff. I feel that discredit the game.
There's some good stuff about it, I think, but that's a tangent. But I just like the tactical combat I'm hearing about here, and like the class stuff. It's just like I'm very interested.
And the thing you also like too, Adam, is like you're very like you'll never have like an abundant amount of resources. At least where I'm at in the game, like I'm constantly like having to like think about how I want to spend like my money, and like my money has been just been going to like mats that you get from like a trader at the encampment to get more mats to invest on like getting a few upgrades here and there for like this passive stats. And like there's this other currency called kudos in the game, where you'll basically get kudos throughout combat, or just like doing like special tactics, like perform a backstab, hit 3 people with a spear at once using a skill, or land a critical hit. You'll accrue kudos, and then that's another currency that you'll use to gain like stuff like special one-off spells that you can do in combat at the use of like using this special like QP thing, but they're only like one-off spells that you can do, so you only use them if you're at a pinch, or you use them for stuff like stuff to like promote class, or get lore books.
So can you in this game, like, are there random battles where you can, if you wanted to grind money, can you do that?
There are like these repeatable battles in the encampment that are like kind of like almost like challenge missions, because some of them are like, oh, you have to complete it in this amount of turns, but they don't really have a big payout, and they have like a level cap. Like there's like a level 10 mission, so it's not like you can like grind endlessly, because if you try to over level in this game, there's like a really big drop off on level scaling. If you're even one level above like an enemy, like you'll just basically get no XP after certain point.
And I feel bad bringing up Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics all the time, but I guess that's just natural.
Well, I mean, we've compared it to Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics, Fire Emblem. I mean, I think that's just natural to be like I don't know.
But like Tactics Ogre, I remember, and I think Final Fantasy Tactics is the same way, where random battles in those games scale to your level where the story battles didn't. And I remember you could easily overpower yourselves if you do the random battles, because since they scale, you're always getting good experience. But then you like do the story battle. Let's just say after 3 hours of grinding, and it's like, oh, these guys are 10 levels lower than me now.
I think Final Fantasy Tactics Advance is the same way. I forget if Final Fantasy Tactics is.
I don't know if story level are skills or not, because so far they've been like either like all the story stuff, like the recommended level on them has always been like either one level above like my dudes, or nearly like at the same level.
Let me clarify my content. I think if I remember correctly, Tactics Ogre on the first playthrough, the levels are set, but then on subsequent playthroughs, then they all start to scale, if I remember correctly. It's been a while.
That's a similar situation.
Okay. I think that's like, but like my early thoughts on triangle strategy. Like I'm digging it so far from where I'm at. Once you actually like get through like the initial like, okay, here's all the stories set up, and here's the state of the world, here's all the characters. Once it actually starts getting going on like, hey, you can start like playing the game and like progressing your characters and like recruiting new characters, I think that's where it starts to really shine. But it requires like getting through that early stuff.
I think going in with that mindset will help. Just kind of knowing that, like, all right, I might be on this cutscene for 40 minutes or something, rather than having that unexpectedly dropped on me.
Yeah. Now, and the HD2D stuff is like it's better than the initial demo that we played. It definitely looks a little bit cleaner, but it does have the inherent HD2D things of like the bloom still like a bit on like the crazy side. I've definitely had like a few textures glitched out here and there, and then like the shimmer on some objects are like a little bit too intense.
Oh, that reminds me of one thing from the preview that I don't know if they fixed, and it's kind of particular. So there was one cutscene where it was 2 characters talking in a room, And depending on which character was talking, that character would be in focus and the other character would be out of focus. It's like they just discovered what depth of field was and was like applying it super liberally.
You can turn off depth of field. That's the first thing I do is turn off depth of field.
All right, thank God.
I turned off depth of field and the shadow borders on the corners, and it's been great.
I think Octopath had the same like vignetting effect where you could turn it off, but like depth of field, I feel like in most.
I know you can lessen it in Octopath. I don't know if you can turn it on depth of field off in Octopath though, which is like one of the thing that I really didn't like about its style was because I remember being really annoyed by how depth of field is handled in Octopath. I don't know if you could have turned it off or not at the launch date of that game anyway.
And yeah, I don't know if they updated it with the PC version of that game, but I think depth of field in general, this is like a weird just general gaming thing, is I think it can look really good as long as it's really subtle. But most games just like feel like I heard you like bokeh blur here, like you can't see anything past 5 feet or whatever. I just feel like most games just like
I wish Lost Ark let me turn off depth of field because I hate the depth of field in that game. A lot of it is just a fucking blur, and when it comes to like cutscenes in that game.
Now, I hate to go back to the story stuff of Triangle Strategy, but just one thing to be aware of, I'm asking myself if I should be aware of it, is that it's not like, I don't know, Persona 4, where it's cutscene heavy at the beginning and then it kind of evens out past that point. It's just always cutscene heavy. Like it doesn't let up. All right, just got to.
There's some chapters that fit in a bit more battles, but that ratio's consistent mostly.
Well, I am eager to play this game. I know I say that a lot, but just Elden Ring, and then I was playing another game we'll talk about later in the podcast, and then we've got Stranger of Paradise in a couple weeks that I'm also interested in. So busy time of year, and not everyone's going to get to everything on day one. So with that, we kind of discussed it a little bit in passing on accident, just a bit now, but obviously Elden Ring is still fairly new, and I know we've had more people working their way through it. I have not played it more since the last time we talked about it, mainly because I was lucky enough to get the early access to it. But I just kind of wanted to check in on people like Chow, Josh, and James, who I know have still been playing it, just to talk about their experience past the initial leveling in the initial 2 areas. So in terms of the first couple regions, the embargo for the video and written reviews was basically to cover the first 2 areas. So I made sure that our discussions last week and in my review and in the video review didn't pass those. But I think we will talk about maybe like some of the 3rd and 4th areas now in this podcast and some of the bosses you fight there. So just kind of giving a heads up for anyone who wants to stay completely blind, they can go to the next timestamp where we talk about the next game.
There's a bit of a problem with that because the way that the game is designed, what would you classify as the 3rd and 4th zone?
Well, that's a good point.
Technically, you never have to go to Caled because for some people, the 4th zone might just be the mountaintop of the giants, which is, I'd imagine, most players, an endgame zone.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's go ahead and say that Caled you can kind of accidentally wander into within a couple hours. So let's go ahead and talk about Caled. If we want, maybe the Altus Plains and maybe the mountain and the Volcano Manor. So everything kind of pre-capital.
Anything above ground.
Yeah. Well, yeah, underground's weird because you can get to some of the underground areas pretty quickly. And even when Alex kind of ambushed our podcast a couple of weeks ago, he was just playing like the 6-hour preview and ended up spending half of it in the underground area. So for a lot of people, that might be an early game area. And for some people, they might completely miss it. And that's kind of like what Elden Ring is in a nutshell, is basically just a lot of people. I kind of mentioned in my review just how obfuscated the golden path is, because you can just kind of end up anywhere on accident or on purpose or get distracted. So I'll hand it off just to James, since we haven't heard him talking much yet about Triangle Strategy. So we'll go as we transition into Elden Ring discussion. Just what has your time been like so far past what you had initially experienced last week?
I'm 2 hours shy of 100 hours in the game.
All right. I think you have surpassed me. I think my total time ended up being like 90 some hours. So I have to assume then that you've kind of been pretty exhaustive then, in terms of like...
Yeah, not completely. Like I did check just a few minutes ago, and I'm on track where if I go into a few catacombs and caves that I haven't done yet, I can grab like the missing legendary armaments and the missing legendary ashes and spells that I still need. And as long as I make a backup of my save data before I go to New Game Plus, I can, or before I see the ending, I can actually just get the platinum trophy on my first playthrough. And I wasn't even really trying for that, but I have been, I guess, pretty exhaustive. It's
Yes.
a huge game. It is absolutely massive, and I can only imagine that even with 90 hours in the game, there's still plenty that you haven't done or something like that. Because it's like there's just so much. It's ridiculous.
So what I did do after I beat the game is I wasn't smart enough to take advantage of like copying the autosave to like get all the different ending branches, but I did just look through the achievement list to see all the named bosses that are on there and went and kind of explored the areas to go get those. So I did kind of do that, but like I know there's tons of things where I've seen people sharing on Twitter or social media where they, like for instance, I kind of forgot about this, but it's in a pretty early game area where there's an elevator that comes from the bottom of Stormvale Castle that doesn't work right away. And I know you can like encounter some really, neat stuff down there that ties into some quests. And I know that I kind of made a mental note of it the first time through Stormvale Castle. And then I just completely forgot about it because I just completely got distracted and went off to do other things. And then I saw other people, like as they were playing through the game upon release, fully exploring Stormvale Castle. I'm like, oh yeah, I never went back for that. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, depending on either your memory or how good of notes you take, you might have like a completely filled. Like I know Alex, whenever he shared screenshots of his map with me, you can set like those green map markers anywhere, and he used those like really liberally, and I didn't. And I kind of wish that I did, because I'm sure there's tons of areas where I'm like, okay, here's a door I don't know how to open. I'll go back later. And then I never did. So
one thing I did in the I guess I was gonna say fourth region, but it could be the third region depending on who's playing the game. So in the Altus Plateau, a buddy of mine and I were doing one of the many mini dungeons in the kind of like overworld, and we came across an enemy type in it that was like hanging onto a ledge, and we could very clearly see that there was a way to get to that ledge and that there was an item there, but we could not find a path forward in the cave that we were in. So we went looking around, and we eventually found that there are actually some caves like that connect to each other, like, and we didn't even think that was possible. We thought that for the most part, like the caves, they either exited out somewhere or they were self-contained. But no, apparently there's like caves and maybe even catacombs that kind of connect to each other. Maybe not directly, but in the sense that you can kind of see into another cave from one. And it's just,
Yeah, I had that moment that happened to me when I took on a boss that was like at the by a special landmark, where like the landmark was like this gigantic skeleton in yellow robes, sitting on it. And like after that boss, like there's like a waterfall behind it, and like you saw a grace there. I'm like, I have no idea how to get to that grace. And there's nothing in like the interconnected cave system that I was in that like allowed access to like that bottom area of like
I
where that
think I know
grace
what you're
was.
talking about.
me too.
It
Yep.
was one of those underground areas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that section, that boss is, you get to it from basically the opposite side of the cave system. So in
Yeah,
order
that's what I
to get,
thought.
yeah, in order to get to the rest of that area, because you have to kind of double back and like go take the opposite branch in the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
There's a lot
just,
of variety in terms of like the scope of each cave. Because yes, I would say the plurality of them, like 40%, 50% of them, are self-contained, where it's like, here is the Stormvale Catacombs, here is a mining tunnel that you go in and you get a bunch of different. The game does this semi-smart thing where in kind of each region of the game, there's usually at least one or two places that has like a lot of mining tunnels where you get like the smithing stones and some of the somber versions, like, and they tier up the further you get. And then there's
and
some
fun
caves.
fact,
Go ahead.
and fun fact, the game actually, it's the one type of cave that the game outright marks for you, because if you look on the map, if you get the map like the map pieces for the zones you're in, if you find these little like orange outlined like black holes on the map or black dots, that's showcasing where a mine entrance is. So if you're specifically looking for somber, like for smithing stones or somber smithing stones, that's where you need to go, because that's where the game is telling you, hey, there's a mine here. If you want to
And
find a mine,
usually, I'm kind of coming to a realization as you tell me this, because I'm like, oh yeah, I noticed all those caves and I entered them because they're pretty well marked on the map. And it's not like it's not like an icon thing where it's like there is a cave here. It's just kind of like a color on the map. And most of those areas, now that I think about it, maybe not all of them, but most of them have a bell bearing that you can win from a mini boss, where it's like now you can purchase more of these smithing stones or the tier below them from your from the hub area. So I think that's really kind of well designed.
What I learned about myself in this game is that unless it's like really easily like spotted like within my immediate vicinity, I suck at like finding maps in this game. A lot of my map is not even filled out, and I'm like almost near the end of the game.
Oh, it's I can
fun
tell you
fact,
about that.
Yeah, there's a trick to that. Even when you don't have the map, you'll get a vague outline of the main road or highway.
Yeah.
And there's a like orangish, brown, reddish like tower that you can actually see off the side of a road on the map. Well, the lack of a map. If you go to where that is, that's always going to have the map for that section.
Oh, well,
Well,
nice
what's
to know
funny-
near the end of the game.
You know what's funny? I actually didn't even know how to find a map until I asked Brian how, and he told me the exact same thing.
Nice. Yeah,
I love how
"Man,
this game is like, I don't know how to find maps. I don't know how to craft or whatever. And it's not because the game refuses to tell you. It's just because it's all, I don't know. How do I say this?
It trusts you to recognize, to figure out patterns and like work off of them. Like I've been racking my mind about like, I really need to pitch this to Alex, because my number one takeaway, since I'm like, I'd say like 85% of the way through the game at this point, what's going to make Elden Ring stick out to me for so long is just how much it respects the player to figure things out for themselves, and how it's unafraid of players missing things. Because there is so much of this game that it doesn't outright tell you. It has the hints. If you take your time and explore, the game does give you hints about pretty much all of the content in the game. The problem is that you have to actively be looking for it. And that's not even really a problem. Maybe that's not the best way of phrasing it, but it's just like, as a very, very small example, there's a little village in the southwest section of Liurnia of the Lakes, which ties into an NPC side quest. And also, there's an NPC that you can find that gives you one half of a medallion, which you can eventually combine with another half of a medallion on the literal opposite side of the world map to get access to a secret area that's just otherwise completely optional, that, keep in mind, has like so many bosses. It has one of the biggest legacy dungeons in the game. It has
Is that near the top of the map?
Yeah.
Oh, I just unlocked that last night, and my mind imploded in on itself, and seeing that my map grew by double.
And I wanted to be
Yeah.
careful, because that's a lot. That's kind of like a lot of end game optional stuff. But I remember I did this side quest. I found that area. I did the thing that I thought was there, and I'm like, all right, I'm done with that optional area. All right, and then I was looking at the achievements that I was missing. And I'm like, oh, wait, I never found this guy. Where the hell is he? So I, like a bad person, looked it up, and they're like, do you access this from that optional area? Like, wait, there's another place that links to this place? I thought I had fully explored it. And it's like, nope.
Yeah, and then there's like, well, here's the crazy thing. So that boss you're thinking of, I'm guessing it's one of the shard bearers, not the one that's part of the legacy dungeon.
The shard bearer in an area with a lot of red. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So here's the fucked up thing about this. You can also get an instant teleport to that location from doing invasions, and in the NPC that gives you that option, you can unlock that option as soon as like
If you invade
the
other
area.
people, you mean?
Yeah, as long as you invade other people. So
that's cool.
You can technically have that boss, who's an endgame boss, be the third boss that you fight in the entire game.
Jesus. If you just immediately go into invasion mode. I guess one thing I wanted to talk about that you brought up earlier is you're talking about you and a friend were trying to figure out how to get to a certain region. Were you playing a lot in co-op, or were you just meaning like actually in co-op? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Because I never bothered with it, partially because I was playing it early access, but also because I just normally played these games kind of single player. I've never really bothered with the summon stuff. So just how does that work?
So me and my buddies have there's a network option that the Soul series has had for a while where you can set a matchmaking password, and then the three of us all have the same password, and we're usually on PSN chat while we're playing, and we're like, "Hey, I found this mini dungeon. Do you guys want to do it with me?" And then we'll just all like head there, and then we'll just knock it out for each of us in order, and then just head on to the next.
So that's how it works. Like one person, I know this is a little bit more like back of the box type stuff, but one person will host and the other two will join as summons, and then you kind of rotate through who hosts.
Yeah.
All right. That kind of I did play, now that I think about it, I did play a little bit of Dark Souls 2 that way, and it's worked the same there. So it seems like it's kind of generally the same framework. Are you guys playing a lot of different builds? Or I guess I know I asked Alex this when he was playing, and he just said I'm playing Sword and Shield or whatever. I know that I've seen Josh playing with the the Zweihander. Is that what he's ended up sticking with?
I have a completely different build now where I'm power stancing, but it's like 2 colossal hammers.
2 of them.
Yeah, and it's like I just really beefed up on fucking endurance, so I have medium load at it, and I'm just power stancing 2 big red colossal hammers, and it's very
those hammers, huh?
Yeah, those are I love them. They're so fucking dumb. They're really good.
I love them.
So,
what were you playing, James?
So I was using a colossal sword. I was using the very Game of Thrones Iron Throne-esque grafted great sword for the longest time, and it was working out well. But then once I got the Moonlight Greatsword, which of course it's in this game, it's a From Software game, I basically respect to become a Mage Knight, and I've been playing as a Mage Knight since, and it works out really well. Because I get the feeling of I can pretend I'm still a strength build when I swing this giant greatsword. But then I also have access to all of this magic, which is really kind of useful in this game.
I just Googled this because I also had the big Game of Thrones-esque greatsword for the longest time. And I think I probably need to respec into this as well, because this looks really cool.
Oh yeah, especially because it's a skill basically gives it an aura, and then it lets you shoot out sword beams like you're playing Legend of Zelda at full health.
I was playing last night. I played for like 5 hours, and I was running with, because I've been greatswording the entire time, and then I got kind of bored, and I just I got like a really strong halberd, and then I kind of just been switching to lance, but that greatsword looks really cool, and I think I want to try to find that.
Well, if you're doing a certain witch's side quest chain, you're on your way.
I tried completing that chain, but I think I locked myself out of it, and I couldn't complete it. But maybe I'll look it up later. I ended up, I think I stated this last time, so I won't belabor the point. But I started with a magic build. Took me forever to find any more sorcery, and then when I did find a sorcery, a lot of the early ones just felt like not very good. Like I was using the Glimstone Pebble for a long time until I got some more decent spells, like 20 hours in. And then I found this katana that is a dex int scaling katana, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll kind of go into this hybrid build, and it does the whole anime like unsheath your sword, shoot a magic slash sort of thing, and then I'm like, all right, this works. And one thing that I actually found really useful of it is that when I was doing the magic spells, even like the big powerful ones that you get later, they don't do a good job of like staggering enemies, getting them to like fall to one knee, but the sword weapon arts or whatever they're called in this game do. So I would often like start out in the sword, get the enemy to stagger a few times. And I don't know if this is a built-in mechanic. I'm sure it is, or maybe people who have crunched the numbers know it, but it's way easier to get a boss to stagger once or twice, and then they seem to get like more resistant to it. You have to like hit them harder. in order to get them to fall over. At least that seems to be it in my experience. So what I was doing is I would start out in the sword, get them to stagger a few times early, get a lot of free damage, and then kind of back off and use my more like spell casty magic later once I'm like, all right, the sword's played its purpose. So I felt like a truly hybrid build. And normally in these sorts of games, in Dragon's Dogma and Skyrim and most RPGs, I just get scared of hybrid builds because I feel like, oh, I'm going to be a jack of all trades and I'm not going to, it'd be better if I just specialized in one or the other. I feel like this is a really good balance where there are tons of combinations that don't end up feeling underpowered if you spec partially in strength and partially in magic or partially in endurance. There's a lot of really fun synergies that end up feeling really good and in some cases potentially even broken. I'm sure we'll see like these no-hit, or I'm sure they already exist, like these no-hit naked boss runs or whatever, where people just find like the perfect strategy to counter a boss and use a specific weapon combination or magic combination that just completely cheeses them. I saw someone say like the meme phrase for these games shouldn't be get good, it should be get cheap, because there's a lot of ways to be really cheap in these games in terms of using summons or using spells. Like I sent a little like 10-second video to Alex where there's one of the legendary spells that's in like the Gleamstone category of sorcery is basically just a Kamehameha beam. It's actually it's not that useful because it fires in a straight line. And most bosses are smart enough to dodge it, but there's one specific boss that isn't. He just kind of charges straight at you. On top of that, there is a Flask of Physic, which is one of the mechanics in the game where at the different minor trees, you get different little bonuses that you can buff this potion with. And all right, so James has just linked me a little clip here. Let me watch this and give me my commentary in real time. So, all right, he's wielding the Moonlight Greatsword. He's casting this spell. Oh, he's doing exactly the same thing I was talking about. I couldn't get this boss to stay still when I was doing this. That's exactly what I did, only I did it to the boss in the capital with the not with the weapon art, or no, with that same spell. I used the are you using the Flask of Physics where you get the infinite?
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't even really expect that to do anything because my summon was basically almost dead at that point. So I thought, this is gonna be a wipe, and it's like, I might as well fire this anyways. And it's like, what the fuck? I've been at this for 4 hours. Why did this just work?
So, where is mine? I know I have like an equivalent video, but I don't know where it is. Where is it?
Not to interrupt. I do.
No, please
I think
interrupt.
I have to bounce. Oh yeah, I think I got to bounce now.
That's fair.
Yeah, but thanks for having me on. One of these days, I'll try to be on for the entire podcast.
No problem. I know we have these pretty long, and not everyone's got all the time. But
all right, later, fellas.
No, thanks for coming on, Colin.
Have a good one.
So, Chow, I haven't heard you talk a lot. I know you mentioned that you were about like 30 or 40 hours into Elden Ring. How are you?
Yeah, what's Birthday Boy rocking?
It's Birthday Boy rocking. Well, let's see what I did in Elden Ring. Let's see. I'm trying to remember what the last thing I did. I fought some knight in some kind of manor that had the worst enemies I ever encountered in my life. These hand spiders.
I already know which one you're.
I love like just how many moments in this game. It's very self-aware and is very clearly knows that they're fucking with you. My favorite is this one enemy, and being very vague, there's a section where there's a type of enemy that is a sentient boulder. And the first time you see it, it's like you're trained to be like, oh, I'll wait until the boulder rolls down the hill and I'll move. And then it's like, why is it moving up the hill? Why is it chasing me? And then later, there's a room with a treasure chest in it. And as soon as you enter, the door locks behind you and the boulder falls from the ceiling. And you have to dodge it and kill the living boulder before the door unlocks. And it's just like one of those things where it's just very, very clear that From Software is like, okay, how can we fuck with our players?
You know what I would say from a From Software game and in a fighting game perspective? All the enemies you fight is like a smurf that is out there to kill you. Or something. I don't know, like, I swear to God, like, every single enemy AI in this game is, like, trained to be, like, a professional assassin against you. It's like, what did I do to your family or something? It's like...
I found my equivalent video. I know this is kind of silly that people listening can't see this, but I did the same cheesy tactic on this boss for this thing. So, Get cheap.
Yeah.
Oh, I got staggered once during this. This boss just completely ran towards me.
But what are your goals, Chow? Like what kind of build do you have in mind as you're like progressing through the game?
I don't know. I'm always the lame guy that just go for pure melee. I beat all the bosses without using summons and just went for melees and no cheap attacks either.
Damn, Giga Chad mode.
Giga chat mode. I don't care if I had to die a lot to get through it. I mean, I feel kind of dumb, but it's my pride. I'd kill the boss using a melee build without using weapon arts because I don't even know how to use most of them. Right? Like I don't know how to take advantage of the system, even though the game encouraged you to try these things. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think in Dark Souls 3 that I keep using the wrong term. In Dark Souls 3, they're called weapon arts. Here, they're called Ashes of War or something weird.
Yeah.
And like in Dark Souls 3, I felt like the weapon arts were really underpowered. And I'm sure someone's like, "No, have you ever tried this? It's super overpowered." But during my time with the game, whatever weapons I was using, the weapon arts weren't that good. Where here in Elden Ring, they feel like a lot of them are kind of been not, I don't want to say overtuned, but buffed up, where it's like you really benefit if you learn how to use them.
There are definitely like some weapon arts early on, and it's like, okay, these Ashes of War are like whatever. There's definitely like tiers of Ashes of War where like you don't really get like the really cool stuff until like you get way later on in the game, because like a lot of the early Ashes of War, it's like whatever, and then Dark Souls 3 ones were like they were too confined by the weapon, because that's how weapon arts were determined in Dark Souls 3 was the weapon, and there's no way to swap them around.
But yeah, for weapon builds though, I've been using the the spear that you get from killing the tree sentinel, the golden halberd or whatever it's called. I don't know. I've been using that whole thing for my entire playthrough.
Yeah, what are you doing? That's cheap, man. No weapons, only fists. What are you doing?
No weapons, no armor, fists.
What if you attach it with a claw? I mean, I did find there's like this twin claw weapon that I found in the Stormwell Castle, I think.
Fine, I'll allow it then. But only that, nothing else. Pure melee.
Okay, well, or there's this one item that you can use when you're naked that you get like a 5 stats to all your stats or something like that.
Yeah, you're gonna rock that?
The whole naked build? I mean, come on, you run faster without all that weight on you.
Yeah, that's true. Nothing can hit you, for sure.
It's what Speedrunner uses for the entire Dark Souls series. It's always been naked runs.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like in a month or so, when speedruns start coming out and people get routing down in this game, and like what the hell that looks like, because there's so I don't know how you run this game, to be honest.
Like, what do they do? Would they just open one of those treasures that teleport them to like the end and something like that?
No, soon. I have no idea how the routing is going for this game as far as speedrunning is concerned.
Yeah, I'm curious. I wonder how long it'll take for them to dissect this game.
Like, I really wonder like what an all bosses run looks like in this game and how long that takes.
There was a couple times where, like, because of the non-linear nature of the game, where I would fight some late game bosses, and they'd appear like in pairs or whatever, or as ghostly forms. I want to talk about that more too. And then like later, I'd be recircling back to an earlier area, and I'd fight like one of a pair of bosses. Like, oh, I should have fought this a while ago because I fought the harder version later. And I don't want to be like VatiVidya or whatever and like pretend that I completely dissect the story. I get it at like a high level. I kind of understand what it's doing. One thing that I think is neat that I appreciate, even if I don't fully like comprehend the exact order of events, is that it does, and I can't really spoil this because I don't understand it that well, but the game does this thing where there's like this sense of duality in terms of why it's called the Lands Between, where you almost seem like you're experiencing two timelines. And I don't know if that's the intent. I really don't know. But there's tons of times where you're fighting like a ghost version of a character, and then later you'll meet the corporeal version of the character, or vice versa. And it's at a high enough, loose enough, foggy enough level that I don't really understand exactly what it's telling me, but it's really kind of fun to see things that you recognize from 30 hours earlier, only now it's appearing in a slightly different manner or in a slightly different form, or you're approaching a similar location from another direction. And I'm sure that people are going to start, diving into all the different item lore and location, environmental storytelling to really piece it together. But there's been tons of areas like, oh shit, I recognize this. Oh shit, it's this guy again, only it's different now. Just things like that, which I just really
that was funny. You just reminded me, like merchants of the game, like you can just like shit up by lore in the game. It's
So-
like you just buy like, oh, buy the description of this thing. It's like, all right, cool, thanks.
So here's the crazy thing about that. People are still figuring out not just lore stuff, but there are at least a handful of side quests, like NPC side quests in the game, that nobody knows how to properly finish yet. And
Yeah, I believe it.
yeah, there's like, and it appears that there's at least one more ending left for people to discover, because there's like data miners have found like voice lines for some of those NPCs where it's like, hey, these side quests don't feel finished yet. And it's like, there's clearly something more here. And it's clear that there's probably a mending rune, like, which is one of those items you can get to change the ending here. And it's like, well, how do we get these?
Oh, I got a mending rune, but I got it. So I can't spoil what it's used for because I don't know and I couldn't figure it out. But I got one. But it was so after this is not really. You can keep playing the game after the ending, but you can obviously you can only pick one ending. James kind of alluded to this by saying that you'd have to do some trickery backing up the save in order to like branch out and see multiple endings. But you can keep playing like an open world game at the end, even once you've seen the ending. You very much like Dark Souls 2, you decide when to go on to New Game Plus. I forget how Dark Souls 3 worked. So I kind of ended up getting something called a mending rune, which based on its description, made it seem like I could really change the ending with this, but I had already locked myself in. And in addition to that, with the thing about the side characters, the very first sorcerer that you meet, I think Selin, I think I kind of alluded to this maybe in the last week in the podcast. I hope I'm not repeating myself, but I thought I had gotten everything I could possibly get from her because I had bought all her spells and I had done all of her like side dialogue. And then I just randomly visit her again late in the game and she had more stuff for me. And one of which was kind of like you get something called like a glimmer stone like from her that is used to like transfer her consciousness into another body. And I couldn't figure out how to use that. And I thought I had seen everything this NPC had to offer. And I'm sure if I go to Fextra Life or whatever, people have already figured this out. I don't know if this was one of those obfuscated side quests, but you think that you're done. You think a story thread has run its course. You think it's like, all right, I did that. I already saw this person. I already met them here and I got a thing for it. I'm done. But you probably aren't. It's my experience. It's like if you go back with a different item in hand or after defeating another boss or later in the game or whatever, it feels like there's a more than 50% chance that there was more to it that you missed. And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know how to progress this because either I wasn't paying attention or I didn't take good notes, or maybe I just missed my opportunity. I'm sure that's happened a few times too. But yeah, I'm not surprised that there is a ton of stuff that I missed just because I, wasn't being thorough experiencing all that.
Yeah,
Game seems good.
absolutely wild. It's going to be crazy to see what people will discover about the game in the weeks and months and years to come, because it's like Dark Souls as a series was already very well known for having like really obtuse bullshit with tons and tons of content. And now you have Elden Ring, which is like the size of like Dark Souls 1 through 3 put together. If you like count the bosses and areas, whatnot, it's like it's going to be wild. But it's yeah.
One thing that I can imagine people doing is kind of coming up with and I think this is just people have a natural tendency to like go this direction. Like here is the order of events that you should do in order to see most everything in terms of completing quests or doing side objectives. And I kind of hope there's a few areas where you have to pick one or the other, where if you complete one side quest, you're locking yourself out of another. I hope it's like, I can see someone trying to create like a rubric where it's like, this is the order you must do things in order to see it. Kind of, yeah. And I hope, I understand like the inclination because you want to see everything. But part of me kind of hopes that there's areas where it's like, you do this or this, you can't do both. They're mutually exclusive in some way. But I guess we'll have to see. It'll probably take a while in order for people to like suss out all the mechanics and how it works. Though I do want to say there's a few times where I missed a step in a story quest and the game actually like called me out on it, where NPC was like, "Hey, you missed our meeting over at the Mistwood Ruins or whatever." Like, "Oh yeah, I forgot to meet him there. Silly me," or whatever. And turns out I should have taken better notes. But I enjoyed my time just because normally I play games pretty comprehensively, where I'm trying to like scour and comb and do everything as slow as possible. But because I was playing kind of on a deadline, it kind of forced me to like be a little bit more loosey goosey about it. And I actually kind of enjoyed that in a way where I had to live with the consequences of, oh, I never followed up on that. Oh well, I have to make do. And that's sort of another thing about like if you miss, like Colin said, like the crafting tools or whatever, you miss the spells early on. You have to learn how to make do. It's not only the game telling you to figure it out on its own. It's like if you don't figure it out, you figure out how to make do. You figure out how to just go on without the crafting kit or the spells that you could have gotten. Or
You have to learn to play the video game based on what you have. That's crazy.
Yep. And I saw some people saying like, did you realize you could desummon the horse by pressing L3? It's in the tutorial. And I'm like, wait, you can desummon the horse?
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that all the time.
I never did that. I always just unmount it or whatever.
So you never encounter a situation where you just suddenly got off the horse during like
Nope.
the middle of battle because you probably hit L3 by accident?
I hate mapping things to L3 in general, or whatever the equivalent for Xbox is, where you press down on the stick. So I don't like that. Like a lot of games will have sprinting actions mapped to that or whatever. I try to get away from that.
Yeah, I don't like sprinting on the stick buttons.
No,
Stick
but
button.
I can imagine you pressing the button by accident during like a moment of panic because somebody's attacking you or something like that. You know?
Oh,
I
maybe
mean,
that happened, but I don't think
I
so.
have that before. It's like what? Am I expecting like that the horse just ditched me on its own? You know?
I don't think I've ever like mistakenly hit the stick buttons in a moment of panic. I'm trying to think of a time where I did, and I can't.
I have mistakenly switched weapons. I'm like, no shit, that's not what I want. Damn it, die. I've also had the whole like the game stutters the minute you have to dodge. That's
that's more my issue. Like oh, it stuttered, so it didn't read my input on the.
I remember I was streaming
I
in
died.
Discord where it's like I saw that attack coming, I knew the timing, I know I pressed dodge, but the game stuttered right when the input would have gone through. God damn it!
Maybe the controller I'm using is a little bit more sensitive because I am using a Wii U Pro gamepad on PC. That's what
look
I
at this
use as my
hipster.
main controller. Maybe that stick's a little bit more sensitive. It's easy to hit the L3. Maybe I don't know.
I can't tell you where my Wii U Pro pad is.
I don't know. It's my favorite controller. I mean, you get like 50 hours of battery life, and it feels like a better Xbox controller.
Yeah, yeah. I try to now. You're just making me think of how many times Nintendo scammed me with Pro controllers because I have a Wii Pro pad, Wii U Pro pad, now a Switch Pro pad. Those things aren't fucking cheap, dude.
I'll wait till they make a Switch Elite controller.
Not true, actually. I'm not gonna get a Switch Elite Pro. Like, if they made like a new console, they had a Pro controller for it, then I'll get it again because the default controls suck.
I will be a sucker and probably get the next Xbox Elite controller, even though my first two have had like quality issues. But they work well when they work well. I know that's kind of a tautology, but whatever. All right, so maybe we'll just table it there for Elden Ring. I'm guessing we'll have at least one more podcast, maybe not next week, I'm not certain, when we discuss more ending stuff and maybe once more people have like completely finished the game and what they think about its like legacy or whatever. I don't know. We might get a little bit highbrow about it. But I think that's a pretty good discussion for now to compare with our initial thoughts from last week and our preview thoughts from prior to that. So after Elden Ring released, and I won't spend a ton of time on this, I ended up not really playing much past release because I was playing another game that released a few days in the wake of Elden Ring and kind of got I'm glad that I was able to play Elden Ring early so I could put time into this, and that is the expansion to Guild Wars 2, End of Dragons. So I know that this is kind of a niche thing that not a lot of people are interested in, so I won't belabor a lot of time on this, but I've been playing this game for a while, since it released like in 2012, and this is only the third expansion in 10 years because they've had a lot of hiccups along the way, haven't had a lot of the success that a lot of the other MMOs have had over the last couple of years, but it feels like they finally got their feet under them at ArenaNet, and based on the COVID pandemic kind of conditions where this expansion was made, I think it ended up turning out pretty well. I've been enjoying myself a lot. And
the thing with ArenaNet is that they never announced anything, but basically everyone knows who follows them that they've been trying to develop a different games, but they none of them really left their early planning type of development, so they never got off the ground. And so Guild Wars seems to kind of been delayed in terms of their updates and things like that because of it, and then they kind of had to just loop back to Guild Wars eventually. Is that how it's been, basically?
Yeah, so basically whenever people would announce like on social media or whatever, like I've been hired by ArenaNet, people are like, oh yes, finally some more like support for Guild Wars. Nope, I'm not working on Guild Wars, I'm working on a new project. Oh, okay. And then that person will leave ArenaNet 8 months later and it's like, wait, what? And then that happened like a few times. And it's like, all right, well, but maybe they're making on something else. That'd be kind of cool to see if they could like try their hand. It felt like for a while there, from like 2017 to 2020, that they were going to try their hand like Riot has been able to successfully do, where they take their one IP and leverage it into a bunch of different projects. But they have failed spectacularly, I guess. They have not got anything off the cutting room floor. And you can kind of feel like people who have played the MMO can tell when the resources were siphoned off of it to work on other stuff. And like people would find art stations from former developers at the studio working on stuff like a Dune game or like a space MMO. And it's like none of that stuff ever got announced or ever made it past like I said, the cutting room floor. So
right. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So End of Dragons, basically, it feels like it was a panic move made where it's like, well, shit, this is the only IP we have. We got to leverage it. Let's do it. And they made it in pandemic conditions in like under 2 years. And I'll be honest, when you're playing it, you can kind of feel that in some ways where they'll reuse enemy models, but give them different effects where you can say like, all right, I can sort of see like how that's a good compromise for having limited development time and resources and things like that. Or they'll like reuse like some soundtracks or things like that. But I think all things considered, because that this was made last minute, because this was an expansion mostly made from home, I think the end product ended up feeling pretty good. And I think it is kind of a good sign in terms of if they are able to finally get their, I don't know, head out of their ass and actually like put their full focus behind this game, that they could accomplish a lot of things. It just sort of felt like that they never really had the passion for it, that they were going to give this game like a 5-year lifespan and move on, but then they weren't ever able to move on, where it's like, all right, I guess we're stuck with this. And they are doing some engine changes where they're upgrading from DirectX 9 to DirectX 11. I'm not sure why not 12, but I guess 11's more mature and has fewer like lingering issues that people haven't quite sussed out yet. So the fact that they're doing that, the fact that they brought in like some old executives from, I don't know, the heyday to come back to the studio, I think that the future is kind of bright, and that this is sort of like the kind of like the inflection point where it's like, all right, this is ArenaNet back when they have their focus back on this game, that I think it actually is pretty promising. And what they're able to put together in a short amount of time and in limited resources, I think is actually pretty good. And a lot of the music they've done is really nice. A lot of the new assets are really kind of cool. They've leveraged a lot of the tricks that they've learned during like the ongoing development. Some people think like, okay, Guild Wars 2 hasn't had an expansion since 2016, so it's been in maintenance mode since then. No, they've continuously updated the game since then with patches, like Genshin Impact style. And in that, they've learned tricks with like they've implemented a mocap studio. They've implemented new techniques with like lorebook UI and things like that, or ways to kind of like improve the storytelling in terms of like adjusting camera focus and things like that. And they've kind of like now they have a boxed product that they can put all that into, and it really feels kind of like, all right, this is what they could do with their might behind this thing, rather than just kind of like different devs working on passion projects throughout the years. Like, all right, let's put it all together into one cohesive product.
So like with End of Dragons, is it like a new zone that they added, like a new place to explore, or is it just like I'm not too sure like what the actual content is.
So what it is when Guild Wars 2 does their live updates, typically it's one map per patch. Like they'll do like the core game is something like 22 locations, and then in each season they add 5 or 6 new ones, and then in expansions they'll give you like 4 or 5 in a bundle. So basically this is a new continent comprised of 4 regions all at once. And unlike the live updates where they kind of reuse existing assets or things like that, it's a bunch of new assets, a bunch of new music, a bunch of new like UI and UX and things like that. It is a linear story, so it does kind of pull off on the previous stuff. So it's not It's not Elder Scrolls Online style where each thing is kind of its own separate thing. It is contiguous.
FF14 where you have to complete like the previous story stuff to get.
You don't have to complete it, but the story is contiguous. So it's kind of interesting. Like you could go to End of Dragons without completing either the 2 other expansions, but it's going to reference events from there and takes place after them. So they try to keep it. The fact that it's so physically separated kind of keeps it a little bit like you're not completely lost, but it does reference it. And each expansion adds usually like some new elite classes for your classes to spec into, or new like gameplay systems. This one, it feels like they were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, and like in Path of Fire, the most recent expansion, they added mounts as a whole system, and it's like really robust and really well made and really like transformative. Where in this expansion they added fishing, which is kind of like, you can kind of see like, all right, that's a good compromise. It's not as involved, it's not as transformative, but it's something that they can implement in a shorter amount of time with a smaller amount of resources. So I guess I'm okay with it, with that kind of context in mind. One thing that I will say, and this is something that I've always applauded ArenaNet for, is I am absolutely gobsmacked at how much voice acting there is. Like,
I was watching you play it. Like everything is voiced. Like
yeah,
smallest NPC interactions.
So yeah, you'll be walking on a map, and as you just walk near some farmers, they'll have some just idle dialogue. Obviously, during the story scenes, there'll be dialogue. After the story scene is over, you can go back to an NPC, talk to them. There'll be like text UI where you can ask them a question, but then instead of getting a text box back, they will voice their answer back. And for some people, it's actually kind of frustrating because they like don't care about the story as much. Like, oh, I wish this would go faster. I just want to skip through it. So it's kind of interesting to see like that they put so much time and resources into the voice acting. And for some people, it's just not what they're looking for. They'd rather have text boxes. So I feel like that is something, a compromise that they could kind of, hey, if it's a drain on resources to implement so much voice acting, you could probably cut back a little bit, because sometimes it might even be a little much. But even like the main character in this game, there's 5 race options and 2 genders. So like for every single line of dialogue that the PC has, there's actually 10. I guess you could actually say there's actually 30, because there's 3. It's in French and I think Spanish as well. So like I almost kind of feel like if they could section more of their resources away from voice acting towards other stuff, towards artists or environments or combat design or things like that, it might actually be a better game for it. But hey, if that's what they're deciding to be like one of the strengths of their experience, then all for it, I guess. So we'll see what sort of like, I think a lot of people weren't as interested in this expansion kind of as a standalone thing, more as a what is the future lead from here, because this is kind of in a diet way similar to Final Fantasy 14, where it's kind of a new era for the game, where the current story arc has ended. Obviously the studio is seeming to be like got a renewed focus on the game. What is it for Decade 2 of Guild Wars 2? And we don't really know that yet. So that's kind of like an
adventure, so to speak.
Kind of, yeah. More on that later. So
I was just curious. It's hard to. I was curious, like how many employees does ArenaNet have? Like I didn't know how big they were. It's a little bit hard to find because apparently, like a few years ago, they had a big hiring spree, and then they had like a big layoff like event a couple of years ago, and so it seems like they're somewhere around 200, 300.
Yeah, I think they're at like 250 at their max, and they laid off like a third of the studio. They did some merging with NC Soft West. Then they rehired a bunch of people. So, but then, so it's hard to say.
But their website has several positions open for like senior gameplay, senior software, senior Unreal, senior engineering lead. So it's like they have positions open. So it's like they're staffing up in at least a normal amount for whatever they're working on. So,
Are they hiring new writers? Just curious, because I remember there was a huge drama with Guild Wars because of a writer kept bitching at their fans or something.
Yeah, that was circa 2019. Yeah, though they had one writer
ago.
I think it was 2019. But yeah, they had they've had one writer that's been there since the beginning, Bobby Stein, and they've got a team of writers, obviously. So at least the fact that they've got the one guy there kind of brings a little bit of sense of coherency. But yeah, sometimes you can kind of tell when something is they've had a lot of turnover, and it kind of feels like people go to work at ArenaNet to build up the resume to go then get themselves to Riot or Blizzard, which kind of is an unfortunate situation to be in, because then you don't have that sort of consistency. So hopefully if they have a focus on this game, that they can kind of get more people to stay long term. But anyways, I don't want to belabor the point. I know this game is kind of niche, but long story short, what they were able to put together doesn't feel, I felt like there was some hesitation that it could feel slapdash or that it could feel like really, really meager or something like that. But it doesn't. It feels pretty good. It's not going to set the world on fire, and I don't think anyone is expecting to. But considering the constraints of which they built it, it ends up feeling pretty good, which I think is all we could have hoped for. So it kind of had moderate expectations and met them, which at this point I think I'm more than happy with. A little quick 3-minute thing here. Before the expansion of Guild Wars 2 came out, I did play a tiny bit, just like 4 or 5 hours worth of Elex II. Another one of these early March. Was it early March or late February? Anyways,
March
wake of
1.
Elden Ring. Yeah, March 1st. Wake of Elden Ring releases. So I was able to play a little bit of this early, and I am interested in covering it because I did enjoy some aspects of Elex 1. And Elex 2, I would say, thankfully or unthankfully, is just as technically sloppy as Elex 1. I was having
I've seen opinions on this, like technically describing the same thing, but in like from like opposite directions. Where some people are like, "Man, Piranha Bytes' combat has been terrible for 20 years. Why haven't they fixed it yet?" Where some people are like, "Yeah, Piranha Bytes is back. Give me that 7 out of 10."
Hell yeah!
Jank.
The thing is that
sometimes you just want to play a 7 out of 10 that eats like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. So my short time with Elex 2, first of all, like the animations are PS3 era, the textures are like late PS3 era. The voice acting is
on a scale of like how Babylon's Fall is it? Is it
it's
like better? Worse?
It's not as blurry.
Yeah, it's not as blurry and it's got a better art style, but not by much. 20% better.
20% better.
So it's a 5 out of 10 game then.
I don't know.
Is that how
yet.
the math works?
So Elex 2, the thing is that when I saw like the average animation, like, all right, that's fine. Average voice acting, whatever, I can live with it. Average art, average environmental assets, like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But then like I would have issues where I don't know if it was like a memory leak, I don't know what it was, but I was in this interior cave that had like lots of buildings, lots of structures. It absolutely like tanked my frame rate because I think it wasn't doing like any sort of like under the hood like frustum culling or optimization or anything. It was just like you have everything loaded and taking up whatever resources of your PC. It doesn't look that great. It didn't look that involved, but it was just tanking my frame rate. And it's like, all right, I guess that's fine too. But then all of a sudden, like things start clipping in and out of existence, and like the floor disappeared, and like you could see like this.
I saw that when I was watching you.
Yeah, and it just like you would turn around and you would see like streaks of white where something hadn't loaded in yet, and then it would load in like really slowly, or you'd walk forward and things would like clip. Oh, and I would talk to an NPC and their head would disappear for a bit, just because I guess their head took more resources than their body, and it's that sort of stuff. I'm like, all right, this I can't just chalk this up to be like, ha, that Euro jank. Oh, how quaint or whatever. That's where I'm like, all right, this is really distracting. This is really like not good, like not a good impression. I am not enjoying this. And it felt like it really needed more time in the oven. And it's interesting because I felt like for Elex 2, I gave it a long leash. I'm like, all right, I kind of went in with these expectations that it was going to feel a certain way or perform a certain way. But then they just kind of kept stacking up. I'm like, all right, this is actually not fun anymore. This is actually.
I've never played a Piranha Bytes game, but everything I hear about it is that like the strength in these games is sort of a hard thing to like show. It's things like quest design and things like how like the faction system works and how it's built into the world. Not something you can like show in a screenshot. Is that how you would put it with your experience?
Yes, and Elex 1 was definitely the same way. In my short time with Elex 2, I will say that it feels a little bit safer, a little bit more BioWare, where it's more like, here is a hub area. We have to get a representative from each faction in order to support our fight against the big bad. Where it feels like, oh, that's too choreographed. That's too like by the numbers. I feel like I kind of wish it was just more like, go have almost more Elden Ring like, where it's just kind of like, go have fun. You'll make your way to the ending no matter what you do, and your choices will end up playing in how they play in. But instead, it's kind of like more divided, where it feels like it's more of a template, where it's like there are X factions.
Isn't it literally like, yeah, there are 5 factions, and you can talk to the representative from each one of them.
Yeah, and it's actually built into the world where I think the idea of factions in a game work well as long as it's not so clearly
perfectly evenly distributed like it's a video game.
Yeah, but this one it very much is like, this is where these guys live, this is where these guys live, and this is their leader, and this is their leader, and they focus on this, and these guys focus on that. And it feels just too, I wish it was a little bit more obscured. So early in the game, I ended up going to a faction that like lives in a cave, and they're like very like bloodthirsty. I actually forgot they're called, like the Morcon or something like that. And like I didn't have to go there first. I could have gone to some other place first, but I kind of feel like that I'm just going to go to each place in turn and do the thing there. But I don't know. Maybe it'll end up surprising me at the end. But hopefully the fact that I'm kind of putting it on the back burner for now will hopefully fix some of the like more egregious technical things.
That seems like an ongoing trend with like Piranha Bytes. Is like it'll technically get better like in a year. Just wait.
Yeah. So
They seem to always have like really like rough launches like on the technical side.
Well, the thing is, though,
I remember the original Elex. You ended up reviewing it for us, but you did play it like 6 to 8 months afterwards, right?
I did play it late, but I still had areas where like NPCs would path into like a bridge and they wouldn't catch it, and they just like walk in place into it. Or
I think I remember you fighting a guy like floating in air too.
Yep, they're just sitting there floating in midair, just stuck. Like, so I don't have high aspirations. Like, oh, I'll give this a bunch of time and it'll eventually be good. Like it'll eventually be adequate. I don't know. So I don't know when I'll return to it. Maybe like in April or so, or maybe late March. But I do plan on getting more time into it, and hopefully, like right now in my short time with it so far, I'm not enjoying it as much as I enjoyed Elex 1.
I'm trying to think of like what are like the RPGs this month that I'm like really looking forward to. Besides
Stranger of Paradise.
Yeah, Strangers of Paradise for sure. And then, but that's
Relayer.
Yeah, Relayer March. So March 18th is Stranger of Paradise. Relayer is March.
Josh hasn't said this in the podcast, but he
24th.
was playing the Relayer demo and decided to get all his units up to level 30.
Oh yeah,
well, we talked about it. We talked about the demo last week, but yeah, he's been still playing it.
I don't know if he had his units up to level 30 yet.
I didn't have it. Yeah, I found a way to level up really fast in that game.
He's ready to go for the full release.
Yeah, if
he's overpowered.
Unless my save progress doesn't carry over, then I get to laugh. But yeah, I guess those are the RPGs that I'm looking forward to this month. There's also Rune Factory 5, but I'll wait for the PC version for that.
That game definitely needs a PC version. My fear is still watching the crops having to load the screen.
Yeah, that's.
So on the news front, well, I guess before the news front, I'll talk about some of the features that have been put up on the website over the last week. We talked a little bit about Cullen's Triangle Strategy Review. Obviously, that is up on the site, and we kind of spoke about that at length. Obviously, upon the release of Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, we did get up a review for kind of the second trio from that set of games. So Scott put together a review for Final Fantasy IV through 6, the Pixel Remaster versions. And long story short, good games are still good games. We recommend these versions of the games, and hopefully we'll hear about console releases soon. I know we're kind of beating that horse about that wish and aspiration right there, but and Adam's also.
Let me just jump in real quick and say that like there are some like actually I should say there are numerous minor bugs in like Final Fantasy VI still, and Final Fantasy V was sort of the same way, where they fixed a lot of them, but there's still a couple remaining. Like just one example in Final Fantasy VI, in the late parts of it. Like Cian has a dream sequence, and at the end of it, he gets the Masamune. But then in the Pixel Remaster version, like the dream sequence happens, and the game has like the text that says you get the Masamune, but it never shows up in your inventory. Like it doesn't. And it's like, oh, I guess I don't have the way to get sword. No, there's no. And there were a couple of other bugs that have already been fixed. But what I'm getting at is that I'm hoping that basically, like, however, for better or worse, the PC version is like almost a beta test, and like, okay, hopefully they iron out these quirks. None of them are like game breaking; they're just kind of annoyances. But hopefully, like by the time the console versions eventually come out, they're like polished up a bit.
It's like Piranha Bytes games, you know.
Yeah, Piranha Bytes. We can't just say, "Oh, we'll wait for the PC." Oh, wait, I don't know. So Scott put up a review for those. Yeah, and hopefully we have like the best version of the games once they are eventually announced for consoles. We do have a feature up on the site that actually I didn't realize that James had written until just earlier this morning, and that is a preview of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which is also another March release late in the month. So James, I know you've played Borderlands and you were the best person to write about this. Can you just give us like a quick overview of what your preview experience with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands was? Because I didn't even realize that you had done this.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The preview build that we were given was very, very short. Basically, the equivalent of what would have been a show floor demo. I feel like at E3 or something. Basically, just had access to 2 story missions in one area in one section of a map. It is very short. Had 2 of those story missions, a few side quests, not much else. Couldn't explore the overworld this time, which is one of the bigger changes because it's kind of like a Nino Kuni like style, like chibi like overworld now, which is definitely different. My main takeaway was that it's first off, it's really hard to get a like gauge of how the rest of the game is going to be with such a small like cut.
It's a tiny vertical slice.
Tiny vertical slice, and it's like what might be endearing, like having the whole thing be like, oh yeah, it's all the Borderlands characters playing D&D, so it's like they're like narrating over what's happening in game and stuff like that. It's like that's neat now. Will it still be neat like 30 hours into the game, or will it lose its luster? Will it become annoying? Will they be able to make jokes that evolve from that concept without getting stale? Because like one of the big things with Borderlands is it's supposed to be funny. Like obviously humor is subjective. I know a lot of people that don't think that the series is funny, but it's like just a question of, well, how would I feel if I played the full game? I'm just gonna put it out there right now. I am not planning on reviewing it.
I was actually gonna ask Adam, do we have anyone like signed up for this, or is it kind of lingering?
No.
All right, so
but I will say there are some really nice quality of life changes that even if I can't see like everything that the game like kind of builds up to, if it's like minor changes here and there, like one thing that was really cool, which was kind of like my main takeaway, even if I didn't say it in my preview article, was there's these things called lucky dice you can find hidden throughout the world, and if you find them, like the more you find, the higher your multiplier is for stronger and rarer loot, which feels like a really, really neat collectible for a game like Borderlands, where the whole idea is finding stronger and better weapons. Like, it's like, oh, these things become a bit more than just a random thing for a checklist, because I want to get as many of them as I can, so I can.
The magic find stat in Diablo.
Yeah, so it's like I was like, that's neat. That feels like something that it especially since I've been playing Elden Ring, where it's like, oh man, like why is there a reason for me to explore when there's like all these checklists and all these things on a map? And it's like, oh no, this gives me a reason to want to deal with finding these, because it's actually something I want to get stronger. And it's so yeah. I again, I don't know how the full game will be. Maybe I'll play it in a few months. Definitely not at launch, because it's coming out, I think, the same day as Stranger of Paradise. So good luck. But
in the wake of Stranger of Paradise. All right, so we have that preview up on the site for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. And speaking of Stranger of Paradise, over the last couple weeks, during just like this, as we're in like the meat of the marketing cycle for this game, Andrea and Alex have been kind of scouring all of the pre-release trailers and footage and screenshots and artwork and everything from their social media account and everything to basically kind of identify what this game is as kind of an anniversary title for the series. And they put up a feature called Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins levels are based on other classic Final Fantasies. Here's what. So this is something that has not really been like explicitly marketed from Square Enix, but something that's
actually
kind of
yes, now it has.
Oh, now it has. All right, correct me, Adam.
Which is funny. Okay, let me jump in here. So Andrea posted this piece with Alex's help. Basically says like each area in the game is inspired by a different Final Fantasy. Like this tomb like area is from the Tomb of Wraithwall in Final Fantasy 12, or the Crystal Palace is the Crystal Tower from Final Fantasy 3. And this is what's funny to me is that some people were like, "Nah, you're looking too much into it. These are just inspired. They're not like grabbing them directly." And then they had like a demo from like a PlayStation Japan account that's like literally the Insomnia throne room from Final Fantasy 15, and then the Japanese Twitter account, like just in like the last 2 days, literally they're like, by the way, the Crystal Palace is based off the Crystal Tower in Final Fantasy 3. By the way, the Sunlit Waterscape is based off of the area in Final Fantasy 13. Like they said it explicitly. And there was even like a Square Enix English news post that I believe they talk about the Tomb of Wraithfall. Let me look it up here quickly. Oh yeah, here. So, what is the inspiration behind the Cavern of Earth in the game? Skipping a bit. So, we decided to take inspiration from the Tomb area in Final Fantasy 12. And it's just, I thought that was so funny that, like, Andrea preempted these by just, like, a few days. And some people were like, nah, these aren't based off of other areas.
That's so stupid.
Man. Now, the fact, I can't wait to get to that one area that's very clearly inspired off of Delphoot's Tower from 11. Because it's like, considering the layout for that tower in 11, it's like, oh no, is it gonna be that bad? Is it gonna be worse?
Yeah, so both James and I played a bit of Final Fantasy 11 last year or the year before. I forget how does time work anymore. And that tower is one of the earlier kind of like big dungeons of that game that you play in either the base game or the expansion that launched in the English version of the game. I forget. But it's very like maze like, but also like not very detailed. It's very like 20 years ago tech. So it's kind of cool to see it like brought up to modernish standards with the screenshots that we can see, and it's kind of cool where you in Andrea's and Alex's feature up on the site where you can say like, oh, that's obviously like how could anyone have doubted that this was what this was based off of? So they've got we've mentioned a few of them. The Insomnia Castle, the Delphoot's Tower, the Sunlit Waterscape, the Evil Forest.
There's a few that are like more questionable, and it's kind of fun to try to determine like, is this inspired by something? Like there's one that has like sandy mechanical like towers, and it's not immediately obvious if that's inspired from something, but Andrea kind of just like, shot in the dark is like, maybe this is Figaro Castle from Final Fantasy VI, because that's basically a castle that buries into the sand and is like a moving fortress. And then there's one that's like a sky fortress that's kind of mechanical but ancient, and like maybe this is the Ronka ruins from Final Fantasy V. And maybe she's not 100% correct, but it's sort of fun just to kind of guess. If it's
I remember the forest area they originally thought might have been Makalania, but they're like, no, this looks a little bit too dark and dreary. Maybe it's Final Fantasy IX's Evil Forest. So
right, and we'll find out eventually. But the speculation is fun.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a game. Like every time they reveal like some snippets of footage, like of the classes, I'm like, this game. Like I just get more excited to just get my hands on it. Like it just looks so responsive and so fun to play.
And it also looks incredibly
seems like
stupid.
It's doing one of these. It's in terms of like story. Like who knows how weird or stupid or cool it's going to be, but it seems like it's going to somehow like be. People are wondering like, is it some sort of like origin story for every Final Fantasy game? Like
there's like a weird earnestness to it that like I can't avert my eyes from. Honestly,
Nomura. Who knows?
But yeah, that is also up on the site as well as our current guesses. So we'll see how close we are. Andrea is. She's the one that put in the lion's share of the work along with Alex. All right. So last week we made a prediction of what we would expect at the new Pokemon Direct or whatever it's called, Pokemon Presents, that was held like a day after our podcast. And I think all of us kind of safely guessed probably just Pokemon Legends Arceus expansion information. Like that's all we're expecting to see, right? It turns out no. We got an announcement of a new Generation 9 series of Pokemon games with Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. So this is something that I feel like, I don't know if my sense of time or scale is just escaping me now, but it feels like this was much sooner than I expected. And the trailer for this seems like it's very clearly in the vein of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Like that was almost like a template or a beta test of what this game is intending to be. So we basically
there are two reasons why this feels like it came so soon. One, Pokemon Sword and Shield had the expansion pass stuff that came out, a year after it released. Right? So like there was more content for Pokemon Sword and Shield more recently, even if the original release was 3 years ago. Because the truth is, it's about 3 years between generations. That's just kind of how it's always been, and that's how it is still. So there isn't really any sooner. So that's one reason, is that there's been expansion stuff. And two, you just shove an Arceus in there, you kind of just assume that it would be like the schedule would be pushed a year or something off or something because Great Game Freak was making Arceus instead. But no, this is just an additional game. Didn't affect the schedule at all, I guess. So,
right.
yeah,
And one thing I didn't say is that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are slated to arrive late this year in like a normal Pokemon window. And I've seen some people like kind of joking, like Game Freak, take your time challenge or whatever. You don't have to shotgun these out and like make it skim the bottom of like making sure these things are so threadbare and held together, like technically. But it seems like that's not what they're doing. These are going to release in the normal cadence as an annual Pokemon game. And the trailer for this is mostly like about half of it is like live action goofiness, which I'm okay with. And then the other half of it is basically like, do you remember Arceus from 2 months ago? Here are some very similar looking environments, only now in a new region of the Pokemon world. I forget if they've announced like in the press release later what the name of the region is. Let's see.
I don't think so. We know it's based off of Spain.
Like, yeah, it seems like very Spain.
Correction. It's based off the Iberian Peninsula.
Yeah.
It's not just Spain, it's Portugal.
So Portugal, Spain. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they haven't given the region a name as far as I can tell. The thing about this announcement is that it was like the trailer and then a bunch of like press release information kind of like trickled in about the starters and things like that. Which, by the way, the starters...
We need to set up which camp are you guys on for starters?
Well, I love the meme on the internet. The first one is 4chan for the grass type. The fire type is Reddit.
The grass type is Weed Cat to me.
The fire type is Reddit, and the water type is Twitter. So pick your poison.
I like the doofy fire apple dinosaur dude. Fuecoco.
It's very clear. I wonder if they're gonna have the balls to make the fire starter end up as a fire grass type, because it's very clearly riffing off of a chili pepper.
Oh, and then of course the bird, which is Quaxley, basically immediately like people just putting like Kingdom Hearts Donald Duck. Like,
it pretty much is.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
Also, the way that the bird's like art, he's like the way he's moving his wing.
Yeah,
like, makes people like attach him to like he's fabulous sort of archetype.
I don't know. It's I think I'm torn between the fire and the water type, Huecoco and Quaxley, and then the grass is like I don't know. I can't. I'm always gonna call it Weed Cat. I can't call it Sprigatito or whatever. It's Weed Cat to me.
I'll just call it 4chan.
So basically, here's one sentence from the press release where it says, trainers can explore an open world where various towns with no borders blend seamlessly into the wilderness. So basically, they're just... It feels like... It's kind of weird, because this is the game that everyone's wanted, right? An open world Pokemon game. But I don't know if people are like excited for that. I don't know if because like Arceus kind of like dowered like, oh, this is what they can actually accomplish.
I know. I'm wondering if like the open world element of it is even more open world than Arceus, the way it says like no borders, because the town in
Arceus is still subdivided,
kind of separated thing.
Okay,
right?
So this seems like kind of a mix between, well, not really a mix. So the reason I was willing to give Arceus a chance, and I was actually excited for it, was because of the second DLC in the Sword and Shield expansion pass, in which was the Crown Tundra, which had its main town seamlessly integrated into the wild area, and how you literally there was no loading zones, you just walked into the town that was also in the wild area. So it sounds like they're kind of doing something with larger areas. It's obviously using the changes to the engine that Arceus did, if you just look at the footage. But it seems like they're incorporating some of the aspects of, oh yeah, you can just walk into the towns from this way. So it's going to be interesting if they're still going to focus on the segmented regions like Arceus. I think there's a possibility they will, but it does seem pretty clear that there's going to be like towns and cities just directly tied to the wild areas, like the Sword and Shield DLC, and I'm here for it. I do wish it wasn't coming out this year, just because I feel like they're not giving Arceus enough time to kind of breathe.
Right.
But I mean, like I said, the Sword and Shield DLC got me back into Pokemon, and like Arceus, like for all the flaws it had, I still had a fantastic time with it. So I mean, yeah, like my main issues with Sword and Shield were down to, it felt like I wasn't able to explore. It felt like the areas, all of the routes were so linear. The fact that this one is like, okay, well, it's still going to have not a full complete Pokedex, but after Legends Arceus, I don't really care about that issue. As long as they have like interesting ways to find Pokemon, interesting new Pokemon, and the region itself is fun to go walk around and explore, I'm more than down for this. So I'm pretty excited. I feel like this is the most excited I've been for a Pokemon game since like Generation 6. And I have a feeling I'm gonna probably end up liking it better than Generation 6 too. So yeah.
We gotta talk about these trainer character designs. What's going on with them?
They're weird.
would like to congratulate the Pokemon Company International for showcasing the first non-binary Pokemon protagonist, because it's just the same character. It's just the same character.
You're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. They definitely look very similar.
I'm just now looking at the designs. Yeah, it's like they have the exact same outfit, exact same face, just the same hat.
Yeah, it's like yeah, it looks like you have different expressions. It's the same person but different.
Yeah, the boy
expressions.
is like upset or sad.
Yeah,
For
why
some reason.
is the boy so like? What's he worried about? What's he anxious about?
It's like, oh no, they're releasing another Pokemon game this year. Oh god.
And they're not giving it extra time to breathe. They're just going on schedule.
You know
Oh,
what? Maybe
darn.
the boy's right. Maybe I agree with the boy here. But yeah.
The Sword and I never played Sword and Shield, but like those designs, at least like the girl trainer that would be hard to top. So I don't know if we're gonna get quite as many memes about like the Scottish. I don't know. I had fun with like enjoying that from the periphery.
I've already been seeing people making memes about, is this the small Victorian child y'all have been talking about?
Oh. But yeah, I think it was. I'm sure a lot of people were surprised. Like, yeah, we're announcing a new generation. It's coming out this year.
And they announced like a small little like free update for Arceus, but I was expecting like some sort of expansion pass, something or other, but nothing yet.
It's the free update
is coming out. Who knows?
It's called Daybreak, right? Not to be confused with Sunbreak from Monster Hunter.
It's like it's like there's some different like
Outbreaks.
What are they called? Outbreak events, and then you can battle the wardens again in the village. I think that's about it.
Which seems fun and fine, but now if
there's a photo thing.
I need to play the Daybreak update so I can update my guides.
Oh. The curse of the guide writer.
Games as a service.
Yep, all of them, all the time now.
So you increase your playtime, guys, by writing guides.
It's weird. It's weird that like Arceus now just feels like a one, like not necessarily a one and done thing, but it's just like here's like another update. But I don't know if they're really going to place that much emphasis on it moving forward compared to like, hey, we have a new main line now, and Arceus just felt like pre-release like the next big thing for them.
But the thing is because they we're not that far removed from the Diamond and Pearl remakes. That was only 3 months ago. So like the fact that they basically had LCA or whatever make those kind of felt like, oh, they're just giving Game Freak more like internal time and resources to make the next mainline Pokemon game.
But not really.
But instead they just use the extra like bandwidth to just create like this additional game on the side, which is fine, but it's just interesting because I think we all kind of hope for, all right, the next Pokemon game, they're going to really like give it their all and give it time to breathe. And this is really going to be it. And it seems like that's still what they're trying to market Scarlet and Violet as. It's just hard to take that on faith when it's like, yep, we're releasing this like in the same year under the same tech of a game that kind of hit the mark, but didn't like nail the landing in Arceus. If this said like for next year, 2023, and this is just a very early look, I think I'd be like, all right, finally, here we go. But it's like, oh, okay, we'll be playing this in 8 months. Okay.
To be devil's advocate, I will say that I do very clearly remember saying that I was worried about Arceus the moment they announced it was coming out in January. Because I thought when they announced it for 2022 that it was going to be their holiday title, because it's like, oh, well, they're releasing Diamond and Pearl remakes late 2021. So obviously, like, Arceus Legends has got to be their holiday title for 2022. That did not turn out to be the case, but it still turned out well. Like, I mean, There's issues here and there, but like it's very clear that
Yeah.
the overall reception for Arceus was very positive. So I mean, they clearly. I mean, maybe we need to give Game Freak the benefit of the doubt and just assume that the issues with Sword and Shield were down to getting used to a new framework to develop their games under, and now that they've had a chance to like get more user tools, figure out what they want to like explore the series going forward with the Sword and Shield DLC and then Arceus, maybe it's just back to normal because they've been making games on a yearly basis for like over 20 years now. Over
Time will
25
tell
years.
on that. Like when this thing comes out, and we'll see like what the technical issues will pop up out of it. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's easy to say, maybe they're just getting used to it, but when it becomes a repeating pattern, that's like, okay, what are we actually doing here?
Yeah.
Well, he did preempt his statement with saying devil's advocate. So
yeah.
So let's hope for the best, I suppose.
Yep.
Here was another surprise announcement. Well, actually, sorry, not technically an announcement because this will be announced in July, and this is something I don't think any of us were expecting.
It's so weird.
This is an announcement of an announcement, the classic, and that is we are expecting this here in July. The announcement of Fuga Melodies of Steel 2. This originally appeared in a column in Famitsu magazine where the CyberConnect CEO basically, dropped this news, which was then confirmed by the creative director of the game on Twitter. So Fuga Melodies of Steel was a game that we thought pretty highly of collectively. In our top 10 last year for 2021. And unfortunately, we kind of got some, intuition talking about how it didn't really sell that well. It didn't perform.
Not really intuition. They just sort of said that outright. Like,
right.
I don't know. Like they've only made. I don't remember the number. It was like
they said million. It didn't meet expectations at them, and they said something about like that.
Yeah.
Well, they literally said like it cost 300 million, but we only made 100 million yen or something. Like that. They actually gave numbers.
Yeah, something like that. Like one thing I'll give credit to CyberConnect too about like this whole ordeal is they've been like incredibly transparent, which is really cool. Like it's unfortunate that the things they're being transparent about is we did not make money on this game that pretty much everyone that's played it agrees is a really good game. Please buy it. Please play it. Seriously, it's on every platform. You can play it. It'll run on a potato PC.
I find that really bizarre. Making a sequel to a game that bombed, but who knows?
Well, here's the thing. I thought about it, and I think this makes way more sense than I think people have been giving credit for, because they already have most of the assets that they would need done. They already have a gameplay loop done. They already have an engine. Well, it's Unreal Engine, but you know what I mean. Like they already have
the game, yeah.
They already have like realistically like 75% of what they need to make a sequel done. With that being the case, it probably makes a lot more sense to try and recoup development costs by making another game using a lot of the same assets and a lot of the same framework, and then also having that release acting as advertisement for the first game, then vice versa once the third game comes out.
Well, it really depends on like what we see from the sequel, because that definitely like they have a lot of assets for it, but we'll see how much of it is an asset flip.
Oh,
because, against them,
I'm not even saying it's an asset flip. I'm just saying even if they make a lot of new stuff, it's clear that making a sequel with the same framework and at least some of the same assets is going to be a lot easier.
Your costs are going to be down.
Yeah.
I remember having a very similar conversation. First of all, I agree with you in principle. I think that there's a shitty style of gamer that you kind of see on social media where they look at like Horizon Forbidden West and they're like, look how samey this is compared to Zero Dawn or the upcoming God of War Ragnarok or whatever, where it's like, come on, we don't need to reinvent the wheel if we're going to have like a mechanic borrowed between two parts of the same series. And then of course, like the go-to is always like how fantastic a game Majora's Mask is, despite being, very, very loose about just borrowing assets from the original game and just calling the characters different names.
Yeah, so literally just giving the character a different name.
Hell, we don't even have to bring up like Majora's Mask then, like, because like Elden Ring has a ton of reused
Yep,
assets.
yep.
Well, before we get too into the weeds and get too far ahead, let's just be clear about this news. About like on top of this, they're working to announce the sequel in July. They also said that Fuga is going to be a trilogy of games, so they're already also working on the third one of these. And this is separate from Fuga being one of the original titles of their trilogy of vengeance, which had other titles in the in that plan. They said, yeah, they're still working on it. They're not ready to show it off, but they're already running on consoles or on devices and whatnot. But
Yeah, there's a game that's like Cecile or Cecily, and then I forget the other one.
Tokyo Ogre Gate, I believe.
Yeah, and they basically said in the same interview, the CEO, that these games are running, but he said something along the line like they are action games, so we have to make sure they're well polished and well balanced, and they're running, but we'll update you later. So
turn-based games don't have to be polished.
Yeah, CyberConnect 2 is very busy, like with that whole thing. Because like on top of that, they had like two. We didn't know like Fuga was going to be multiple games.
To be fully 100% clear about like where this news comes from, there's a manga that's running in Famitsu. That's basically Fuga Melodies of Steel, the manga, and that's running every week, or at least every other week, and basically the CEO of CyberConnect pops in every once in a while just to give some updates, and then this update was just a beefier one where he kind of just was really canon, like, we're making a sequel.
Yeah, that transparency.
I really hope that they turn things around for Fuga's like financial success, because you can tell, especially recently, that they've been trying really hard. Like, and I feel like the second and third game might have better luck just based off the fact that, well, the first game, like, if you look at the reviews, and ours included, mine included, that it was very well received. So, like, when you're marketing a sequel to a game that's well received, you can say, hey, play this and the first game that were really well received, and that helps.
I'm really interested to see what they'll do to like shake up the formula, because I really like Fuga, but there's definitely a formula to that game where it gets it gets pretty repetitive, and like it's pretty easy to like kind of break the structure of that game. Like once you get a handle of like certain like character combos that just like kind of single-handedly coast through that game.
So one thing I do want to mention that I've never brought up before, because it felt like one of those things where it's like a game has like a teaser for like an additional content or a sequel, and it's like, oh, that's something they want to do. It's not something they're working on. If you got all of the gears unlocked in Fuga, there was like a teaser movie for, I guess, what turned out to be the sequel. So it seems like they already had an idea when they released the game. This isn't something that they just came up with on the fly. So it's like,
I think the announcement came out of nowhere. I think for people who actually like dug into Fuga, it's like one of those like it could happen, but we'll see like if that ever like manifests.
Yeah, definitely at the time felt like they want to do this in the same way they want to do a Solo to Robo remake. Will it happen? Who knows? Well, now they said that they're making a sequel and a third game, unless the second game completely and utterly bombs even worse than the first one. Then who knows? But you're just hoping. And
it's tough, just it being a sequel as well. Like the people are going to be like, "Oh, I didn't play the first one," and that might turn them off a sequel, because it's kind of a weird problem when you attach a number to a game. It's like
it's pretty common. Sequels just don't do as well as the original. That's how it is.
I do wonder with the whole deal with, obviously they had a scenario in mind back in July when the first game came out, and they're saying, oh, we're going to announce the sequel in July. Well, one thing that sticks out to me is that we waited so long for the first Fuga to come out, and then they like had an announcement, and it's like, oh yeah, the game is coming out 4 weeks from now. I am pretty sure they're going to say, oh yeah, the game's out in 3 weeks again, or they'll even maybe say, oh yeah, it's out now, because they control the publishing like for the entire series. It's their first self-published project, and maybe they think just having a shadow drop might be a better way of going about things. Who knows?
Yeah, I think this would be like one of those games like you see like in a Nintendo Direct, and because that'll have the most eyes on it at that time.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, well, here it'll be interesting. Like The game is not announced, according to the CEO, but we'll hear more in July.
Will be announced.
So yeah, look forward to the announcement of Fuga Melodies of Steel 2, and we'll see if James is right and that it ends up releasing sooner than we think. And also during this week, we had another letter from the producer from the team at Final Fantasy XIV following the release of Endwalker last year. So, as always, when we talk about Final Fantasy XIV, I have to hand this off to like James and Chow. Tell me about what was revealed about patch 6.1 Newfound Adventure for Final Fantasy XIV.
There wasn't
James.
Yeah, there wasn't all that much that wasn't already covered in the previous live letter. It was more specific stuff for 6.1. The Hildebrand questline is coming back. Yoshi P basically confirmed that he was bullied into making more of it. If you don't play 14, you don't know what Hildebrand is. The Hildebrand questline was something that started at the tail end of 1.0. That was kind of just the developer shit posting as the rest of the team was working on like a Realm Reborn. So it was like, well, we know this game is going to die anyway, so we may as well have fun with it. And then once a Realm Reborn happened, they were like, well, people really like this character, so let's have some like wacky quest lines with him. And we go all out with like seeing if we can literally break the facial rig system to make him do some of the most stupidest faces you've ever seen.
I like that.
Some of the dumbest cutscenes, but in a good way. And it's like, people love it. Like the Realm Reborn version had like several trials locked behind it. The Stormblood questline had like a trial locked behind it. We only got like a cameo in Shadowbringers. We didn't get anything more than that. But yeah, it's confirmed. Hildebrand will return in patch 6.1, and whatever antics he'll get up into, we don't know. Maybe there will be a trial locked behind it again this time. Maybe.
Well, they already showed a picture of it. They already showed him in Lakeland, so
yeah, I mean, that not too much of a surprise considering like where you find him in that cameo in Shadowbringers, but it's like, man, it's just gonna be like, it's gonna be fun to see that. The other thing they announced was that and by the framing of it and the fact they announced it right around the same time as, oh yeah, somehow further Hildebrand quest. Taru, one of the main NPCs in the Scions and probably the most powerful character in the entire series.
You mean the last boss?
Yeah, we're all terrified of her. She is also going to have a quest line, and the way they advertised is they have a picture of her and she is smiling very sinisterly. It's like, oh no,
that's great.
So it's going to be interesting to see what that's about.
I literally like the key art for this patch. As my friend who's really into 14, who plays it a lot, it's like the big like vacation arc of this game where there was like so many stakes that were like resolved in Endwalker, and it's like after like the biggest stakes have been like that your character went through in Endwalker, like just this key art is like, all right, I need to like get away from it all, walk away from it all, and like go on a vacation, like go on some island and just live my life or something.
I was just thinking that the warrior life has became Ryu. He has became a hobo and just traveling to fight the strongest warriors.
The world warrior. Yeah, I don't really follow 14 that much, but like the key art for this patch is pretty striking to me. I respect it.
But yeah, besides that, we are getting the first Myths of the Realm Alliance raid with the patch 6.1, and then patch 6.11 we will be getting the first ultimate of Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, which is going to be very, very interesting, especially since it will be my first one. Oof.
You can always try the old ones, but
nah, gonna raw dog it. Just gonna go right in.
And by the way, this I don't know if we said this, but this patch 6.1 is slated to launch mid-April. We don't have a specific date yet.
Which means that 6.11 should be late April, since it's probably 2 weeks after 6.1. So, yeah. Interesting stuff, but nothing really big after the whole, like, next decade stream they had a few weeks ago. So, yeah.
It's usually like their standard live ladder to show you what kind of content, and usually their patch cycles are always kind of the same. It's like, we'll add this and this, but, the game doesn't last long enough for for the month cycles, so you kind of run out of content for like 2 months. So this is kind of like the stuff to get all the players back in and stuff, right?
I always feel like we have like a rhyming thing with Chow when he's like, "There's not enough content in Genshin Impact. There's not enough content in Final Fantasy 14."
Well, it is a lot of content, but players run through this content really fast.
Is there enough content in Elden Ring, Chow?
Yes, there's too much to do. There's too much to do.
Okay, all right,
there's no content in Elden Ring. What the fuck
Well,
are
the
you talking
Genshin players can kill me, but you know, the Elden Ring has more content than the entire freaking Genshin patch cycles combined.
Dang. Well, there you have it.
And you know what? And it's even cheaper too. $60 is cheaper than $4,000 of whaling in Genshin.
Jesus Christ, dude! Is that where you're at now? $4,000?
No, way, man. But I hope I don't get there. No.
Okay, not usually, but do you know anyone who's reached that amount in Genshin that you personally know?
Yes, I do. I know a guy that spends his $2,000 paycheck every time there's a new banner. So, and every time he'll always put this message every time a new patch comes: "It's Genshin saved."
Well, he's saving it single-handedly.
But yeah, I'm saying, man, if I was being fair, I think Elden Ring has more content than all the Genshin patch cycles put together. Maybe not in a story perspective, but in content-wise, gameplay-wise, it's like, damn. It's like, and you just only had to pay $60, and you have way more content than this game.
All right, so we'll go on to some of the smaller news from the week. Well, actually, this one might not be that small. Do you guys remember Digimon Survive? It was supposed to release in 2018. So
if you say so,
yeah,
that's a myth.
So we got a kind of an update of this, and it appeared during the inaugural Digimon Con. And the way that this news was revealed, I kind of watched it from the sidelines. I was watching Adam and Josh basically do like a live chat summary, like during like I was not paying attention to it. I was paying attention to it like vicariously through their chat, and it felt really like a fun time. So maybe I'll hand it off to Adam. How was this news revealed about Digimon Survive? No, we don't have a release date, but we got some news about the development, like changing teams on this game.
Okay, so Digimon Survive, if you're not aware, it's like a adventure game / SRPG in the Digimon world. The last time we got like a meaningful update on it was April 2020, where they kind of like, that's when they like had revealed the full cast at that point and most of the gameplay systems. And then since then we've just kind of been waiting, like, okay, when does this come out? And they, up to that point, they had some pretty regular updates. So it didn't like, at that point, didn't feel like it was in dev hell or anything. But since it's been like 2 years since then, or almost 2 years, and it's been delayed into 2021 and then into 2022, we're wondering what's going on. And so this inaugural Digimon Con, like the first one, and this is the thing they're kicking it off with, a lot of people made the assumption that, okay, they're finally going to announce a release date here. I don't think that was a bad assumption. I mean, we didn't know for sure, but it felt primed to be like, all right, here's like a re-reveal, media blowout, everything. But that wasn't what it was. Basically, they started out by saying, we're sorry that it's taken so long, but we've had to change development teams, which is never a good sign. Sometimes it works out, but it's not necessarily what you want to hear. And then we still don't have a release date. And then after that, they showed like a sort of a trailer that wasn't really gameplay footage, but showed like, here's the characters again. It was kind of like honestly kind of.
And keep in mind, all of this is like in stream quality, so like it was the quality of the video itself was already.
But the trailer itself was mostly just like the key arts of the characters, which again were revealed like 2 years ago. Not much actual gameplay footage, but the producer of the series, whose name is Habu, I don't have his name in front of me here.
Kazumasa Habu.
Yeah, he basically had a Q&A, kind of a pre-recorded thing with like the Bandai Namco PR people about like, here's what's going on with the game, and parts of it were fine actually in terms of like describing what the game is like, the tone of the game. And here's, we expect it to be 70% text adventure, talking with your friends, searching for items, not really like an RPG but more of an adventure game, and then 30% strategy RPG. Talked a little bit about like the mechanics of like, you can bring 10 Digimon into a battle and how you use SP and digivolving and some of the nitty gritty. But no like meaningful updates in terms of like when's it going to release. They showed bits of gameplay footage here and there, but not a ton.
It's weird because it got like really like somewhat borderline spoilery because like it's like there's like there's these routes in the game and like there's like these there's like new game plus dungeons. It's like what the fuck are you telling us, dude? It was really weirdly presented, honestly.
Yeah, and there were some in the Q&A later. There were some weird, like very specific questions that felt like the type of questions you get at like a convention like panel,
like open mic,
where you don't have any filtering of the questions. There are some questions. It's like, what were the ages of the characters in this 3DS game from 7 years ago?
It was like so weirdly specific. It was like the questions are like, what are the ages of the characters at Digimon World, whatever, Redigitized Code or whatever? Like, what was that game again? Oh yeah, it's a 3DS game that never got localized. That's a weird question to ask.
Weird question. This is pre-recorded, so it's not like they were caught off guard.
Yeah. Well,
did they answer?
Yeah.
They're like, they're like middle schoolers, like usual.
It was just so weird. And then like they went on to like, so after like discussing like the like Digimon Survive, like we still don't have a release date or release window on it. So like they kind of like as Adam said, they kind of went through like the beat by beat of like what this game actually plays. But then they went off like to another general Q&A section of like Digimon games in general, and like it's like, are they gonna announce another thing? It's like no, it's just weird like questions of like, have you guys considered like going back to the first Digimon world and like maybe a port or remaster or like maybe even a remake? It's like, well,
this is one of those things. This is one of those things that so he literally said we are considering making a port or remaster or remake of Digimon World. And then like some people take that as gospel and like it's happening, and it's just like, I don't know. When you're asked like, will you consider it? What are the chances you're going to say, nah, we'll never do it?
We'll never.
When have they ever said that? Like, no, that'll never happen. But it's possible, sure, certainly. But he did say, yeah, we're going to consider, can we redo the first game or a Digimon World game in some form? Now, one other thing that he did say was they are working on a new Digimon story. Now, they actually did say this 4 years ago also, which is slightly after Hacker's Memory. So that's not necessarily new. They still haven't announced it. They just say they're working on a Digimon story. It is not a sequel to Cyber Sleuth. To back up a bit, there's a handful of games under the Digimon story like umbrella, and then the Cyber Sleuth pair is just a pair of games under that Digimon story umbrella. So there is another Digimon story game coming out that is a Digimon story game, but not a Cyber Sleuth game. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, they didn't say anything else about it other than, and Digimon fans will know what this means. I don't know what this means. The Digimon story game will feature the Olympios 12.
Yo, let's go!
I guess they're based off of the 12 main Olympian like Greek gods in Digimon form. I'm not a Digimon person. I don't know what this means.
I think the only thing I remember from them is that the main Digimon from Digimon Tamers, like the third season of Digimon, like his mega form, it's like part of it. I think it's like a knight with like a shield and like a lance, and I think it's part of it.
For it.
I think that's what it is. But it's like that was really funny.
But in terms of the developers, it was being developed by a developer called Witchcraft, which off the top of my head I don't remember what they.
Digimon Survive? Yeah,
it was a developer called Witchcraft. They're no longer developing it. The new developer is Hyde, and it's Hyde. And when I look up what Hyde has done, they've done a lot of like otome games and visual novels. Like they did Root Letter, they did Olympia Soiree. They did some of the Code Realize visual novels, which they're more the bulk development staff.
Not the band Hyde.
Not like the writers of those games, but the developers. But that sort of makes sense if this game is mostly like text adventure. Like okay, that seems like a fit. Now, not sure how that'll work with the tactical strategy.
It was really funny, like
parts.
It was really funny when they're describing Digimon sprites. Like, oh well, if you're coming to Digimon for like like kid friendly stuff, we're sorry. Digimon Survive is aimed for adults, and it's dark.
I don't know if this is just me being cynical, but I kind of feel like all Digimon fans hope that Digimon games are made for adults. They don't want it to be too kiddie, even though it is a kids franchise.
Yeah.
But they did say that the Digimon Survive will have, mature themes. What did that actually mean? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm really interested to like. I'm so murky. Like how exactly long Digimon Survive is because they kind of give an hour count of like it's like 40 hours per route. It's like what?
There's multiple routes. They say it's 40 hours to complete one route. To complete everything, they said 100 hours because there is a new game plus feature that'll shorten second playthroughs. But yeah, seems like it's a pretty beefy game, more of a text adventure. I know I've seen a little bit of mixed response where people are unsure about the style of the game because it seems pretty different from most Digimon games.
I'll play Triangle Strategy, and that's a text adventure for sure.
It's
so weird. Yeah, I never would have expected like it'd be more. I guess this is not new it's just been a long time.
Not really. I actually have like the piece that Kite wrote up in either late 2019 or 2020, where they've described all this before. Like it's half text adventure, half SRPG, but we didn't quite know like the balance. And he said it's like 7-3, like 70% text adventure, 30%.
But it seems to be like at least more dynamic or interactive because there's like a point where you research for things in the environment.
Yeah, when they say text adventure, it's not just like dialogue, not like Triangle Strategy. There's a little bit of like adventure game, like seeking stuff out. There's this little mode where you get out your phone and it's like a pixel hunt, I guess. Like searching for items, talking with the friends, and there's also dialogue choices and things. So yeah, mix of things.
So. We hope to see it this year, but nothing really. They never really told us that it would at least be this year, as far as we know. So,
random guess here. This is just the Digimon story game that they sort of half announced. I'm just going to randomly guess that MediaVision is working on it because we don't know what else MediaVision is working on. And the timing lines up.
Yeah,
MediaVision developed the Cyber.
I wonder if that new Digimon story game is going to come out before Digimon Survive.
Maybe. Who knows?
So I mean but I don't know. I don't exactly know like what was the response from this Digimon Con news from like the general Digimon fans out there. Like to me, like as an outsider, I'd be like, if I was a fan of that, franchise still, like I still like Digimon, but I'm not like an active.
I think I follow a couple of people who are Digimon fans. I feel like the things that people are like concerned about or hesitant on is that one, changing developers is never, well, like I said, it sometimes works out. It's never like what you want to hear. Like, oh yeah, they changed developers. That's good news. It's like, but also people are a little bit hesitant on like the style of the game because it's not the style of game that Digimon has typically done. So it's like not necessarily what the Digimon fan base is looking for, but maybe it's something new that they will like. It's just kind of an uncertainty, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than open to it. Like after like playing Cyber Sleuth for quite a bit, like while I was like just waiting for like new games to come out, like I'd be, I'm interested to see like what they think a mature Digimon thing is like these days. Like what is considered mature in Digimon.
So most of the other news from this week is a little bit more just release dates or some announcements of some indie games. So I'll just kind of go through them. One of them is an indie game that released, I believe, last year. This is the game Haven, which I believe Josh has played either all or most of. Not last year, I guess it was.
Yeah, I played all of it.
All right, so that was December 2020. So they announced kind of a surprise update where Haven obviously is a game about two protagonists, a couple, U and K, where now they've released an update where U and K will have adjustable genders, so they can either both be male or both female. So just kind of an update that allows a game that was originally about a heterosexual couple to be same-sex. So kind of a surprise, and it seems like it's been like sort of a thing that a lot of people thought was actually really neat and unexpected. I did see a few people, and this was something that I know that Josh pointed out in his review, saying like, well, this doesn't address some of the shortcomings of some of the things that they use in the story. But it is kind of a nice...
It is weird for this to come out as like an update for the game instead of just like it being there from the start. Honestly, it is like I'm not saying it's bad. It's bad. I think it's a great thing to add to the game, but I feel like it should have been there from the start as a pillar of that game to because of of the way it touts being free to be who you want to be with and so forth. And I think that it would have been they would have made a stronger case for this kind of content if it was there from the beginning.
Mhm.
But then it's still welcome. Just better late than never, I suppose.
And it's a pretty sizable update. Like not just obviously you can't just swap a new model in. They said they got
Sure.
like new voice actors to voice basically all the lines again for each
Mhm.
character as the other gender, and
Yeah.
so that's obviously a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah,
Um,
it's, the nice thing is this doesn't feel like a patchwork thing. Like they actually went in on it.
yeah,
And everything.
it's honestly like I think you're right that this probably should have been there at the beginning, and I think that thematically would have even made it stronger. But it's like a really really cool update that they didn't.
Yeah.
It's good that they did it.
Mhm.
It's honestly like as far as updates go, this is probably one of the best updates you could have. It's complete. I've seen people like jump into the game like immediately interested in it now because they can
Something
live
that
out
more
like
reflects their
that
experience,
envision that they can get right. So
Yeah, it's not.
it's really
It's not.
cool.
It's not just like this is like a game that is fully cooperative too. So same sex couples can now just be, hey, finally there's a game that it reinforces that and supports that, and we can actually anything that was a barrier for that hetero relationship is now that's gone.
And there's cool stuff as well where like not just the character models but even like some of the art on the loading screen has been like
Yeah,
there's updated art with like the different
that's cool.
gendered
Well, one of my favorite
Yurei.
parts about that game was the loading screen art. They were very adorable,
Mhm.
so that's cool.
All right, a couple release dates for some upcoming indie games. This one is the first time we've covered it on our site, and this is a Japanese indie game called Potato Flowers in Full Bloom. This is a dungeon RPG that has an aesthetic that's very much like Minecrafty, that has an isometric perspective, and it launches on March 10th for Switch and for PC. So this looks kind of like a really cutesy like dungeon crawler with a lot of like crafting elements. Kind of has like a pixel style to it. So we haven't covered it before, so I don't know if Adam has anything more to say about this, but it's coming out in just
It's pretty much just a Japanese indie game, and it's published by Playism.
Yeah, this is I've seen this on a few Comic-Cat game trailers, and it's always stood out whenever because my friends and I would usually just group watch them and see what's happening in the Japanese indie scene, and this always stood out. And I really like the way it kind of incorporates the HUD elements in battles to be to serve as the background in it, so it's more interactive. It's not just listed at the bottom. This looks really it's so cute. It's so adorable.
Another indie game that is coming out in March is Anno Mutationem. This is like a cyberpunk pixel aesthetic game, like a 2D kind of action game. And I thought that this actually looked really neat because it's like a 2.5D, but with a pixel. When I think of 2.5D, I think of like Klonoa and like New Super Mario Bros, where it's not always like very pretty. But this one has like that sort of framework, but with a pixel aesthetic, and obviously with a cyberpunk like backdrop. And I think the result actually ends up looking pretty neat. And this is coming out on March 17th for PlayStation 4 and 5 and Steam.
I think I was mixing this up with another game. I thought this already came out, but I think I might have been mixing it up with one of those games that was under Sony's China Hero project, because one of those games looks
This one
somewhat
is
similar.
also under that project.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is the same game, just hasn't hit yet.
It's changed a bit in terms of how it looks a little bit, but it was first revealed a while ago, and so it's indie games oftentimes just take a while to make. But
Right.
yeah, it looks pretty neat. Full disclosure, this was actually announced more than a week ago, but I just missed it. Just
okay.
Didn't see it. Oh, but it's coming out in 2 weeks or so.
I wonder when
That's cool.
I remember from that China Hero project, there was that AI limit that was kind of
the Nier Automata not.
Yeah, so that I'm curious when we'll see more of again. And then the last indie game No, I guess that was it. So another game that is coming out in a couple months is Neptunia Cross Senran Kagura Ninja Wars is releasing for
Indie
PC. Well, yeah, not an indie game. Well, kind of. I don't know. And then that is releasing for PC on May 11th. Obviously, we covered it.
It's got an April release first. So it came out for PlayStation 4 last year.
Yep.
Coming out for Switch next month, and then PC after that. Which this is pretty typical for Idea Factory games. Is they oftentimes have these like staggered platform releases. I don't know if that's just a development reality, a strategy, or both.
Triangle strategy, you might say.
I mean, I like a release strategy, but probably the answer is probably both. Is that they just focus on one, and then hey, when you have 3 different releases staggered like that, you can have 3 different marketing cycles.
Well, this actually segues pretty well into the next thing, which is actually kind of interesting. One game that is coming out in September that typically has a staggered platform release, at least for the West, but it will not this time, is the release of the official English version of Trails from Zero. So this game is coming out on September 27th for PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC at the same time. And obviously, whether it was being published by Xseed or by Nice America, it has been very typical for games from the Trails series to have staggered releases. Usually, they release on their original, typically Sony console originally, and then would have a PC version later, and then a Switch version later. Obviously, like I know a lot of these games in Japan were originally PC games. Then it depends on the game you're talking about. But this was the first time in the West that they're releasing on the Sony console, the Switch, and PC on the same day.
I was going to correct you because you said, a Sony console and PC on the same day. It's like, didn't Trails in the Sky second chapter release on PSP and PC the same day? Then you mentioned Switch, and it's like, that's technically correct.
Well, yeah, it depends on the game. Like you could talk about Trails Third only ever released on PC here. So it depends on the game you're talking about. But in this one, it's coming to all 3 on the same time, which is a first, I believe. There should be like some...
It's probably worth noting that Kuro no Kaseki 2 is going to release in Japan like the same week.
It's weird. It's weird that this is like now aligning with like the Japanese release schedule on the fabled September 27th release date that Falcom loves.
Only like 11 years delayed.
I feel like it's the dumbest move you can pull off. It's like you release it 3 days before Xenoblade 3. What am I gonna buy? Xenoblade, obviously.
I was like having a conversation with another buddy of mine that played through Kuro, and basically and we're both Xenoblade fans, huge Xenoblade fans. So eventually we came to the only correct conclusion. We're gonna play Xenoblade first, because if Kuro 2 is anything like Kuro 1, they're gonna have a day 30 patch. Yeah, so just get Xenoblade done first. I'm not sure if you feel the same way, Josh, or what, but it's like that's what we can do.
I wonder what my buddy and I are gonna come up with. Maybe I'll just have his fucking Kuro 2 stream going while I play Xenoblade in another screen. Just do both at the same time.
But despite saying that, I'll probably end up getting Kuro 2 at launch. But
I think all of us here, we kind of talked about this when this was announced, or under the most anticipated. Like, except for Adam, all of us have already played Trails from Zero, which is kind of interesting.
I was waiting for a native PC port. Come on.
You're gonna get a good one.
Modern that reminds me, they had a Q&A on Reddit with Durante. It's Trails from Zero focused, but obviously it's opened up to any of his previous works on Nice, and like he said, like this will have like there'll be feature parity across all the platforms that Trails from Zero have. So like turbo mode, that'll be on the Switch version and the PS4 version. Obviously the PC will have it that aligns with the fan translation patch and stuff. So like he reassured that like he aims to go above just the previous work that's been done on it, which is pretty cool. Durante always a great person when it comes to like just making games work the best they can on their platforms from day one.
Yeah, I mean all of his ports are great. Like the East 9 port is pretty much perfect. It's just great.
Here's the thing that really stood out to me from that AMA, which, by the way, I know we've already said it, but we're definitely gonna have to put a link to it in this podcast post when it goes up or something, because it's got a lot of really interesting replies, and I would definitely recommend reading everything. One of the major takeaways, however, is that Durante's team is not just doing PC ports of games anymore, because Trails from Zero is their first console port.
Right. Yeah.
They're the ones that are doing the Switch version this time
Oh,
around,
that's
which
new
is
to me.
very
I didn't realize that.
fascinating.
That's cool.
So that means that going forward, there's a good chance that NIS America is going to contract them to do Switch ports of games. Very cool to think about, because, like, I mean, I feel it feels weird that, like, a decade ago, Durante was just known for being the dude that released DS Fix and made the Dark Souls PC version one that people could actually recommend. And now all of a sudden it's like, man, if Durante's involved with the technical side of a game support or whatnot, you just know it's going to be amazing. And it's
just think about how the Switch port of Ys 9 would have gone if Durante's team was on it. You know? So it's going to be a new era for them. That's crazy to think about how far him and his team has gone.
And I know, like, sometimes it's interesting that there's like other PC porting houses like Nixis and who did the Microsoft Store version of Automata? It was a Polish porting house. Who was it?
Was it Kulak?
Yeah. And like those, and Kulak I know has also worked on a lot of the Yakuza series, and a lot of those groups also have like good, I guess, precedent, good word of mouth, good like reputation.
Nix's was so good that it got acquired by Sony because Sony wants to use them for their PC ports.
But interestingly, it's, and then there's other studios that have the opposite of that, like whoever ended up doing the Horizon Zero Dawn port. I forget who did that.
I think Guerrilla did that. Like,
no, it wasn't. It wasn't Guerrilla. They contracted it out.
Oh, they got an update from someone. Let me look this up. I remember they had it. I think actually Nix's.
I don't remember.
If I remember correctly, Nix's jumped in after they got required to help out on the PC port for Horizon Zero Dawn in the latest patches.
Virtuous. That's who it was.
Oh, okay.
So anyways, the point that I want to get to, sorry about belaboring this point, but like right now, this is just my opinion. But if you tell me that the PC or hell, any version of the game is being carried out by PH3, by Durante's team, that is like the one team that like, all right, it's in great hands, like could not be in better hands. Like, I don't know if that should be a true statement, but right now it is, because I don't know, they have yet to miss.
Yeah, they one of the things they said in the AMA is that they're trying to go for 1080p 60 docked for Trails from Zero on Switch, along with all the upgrades that make sense for them. Because one of the things they're doing that's really fascinating is that they're looking at the textures for the original PSP games versus the PS4 Kai re-release and the PC version re-release, like the original PC version, and they all have like, obviously you have the original PSP textures, then you see the new textures on PC that are higher resolution, but some of them made some changes to the art that don't match up with what the PSP visuals were going for. And then you look at the Kai stuff and it's even more different. And what Durante's saying their team's been trying to do is they've been trying to take a look at the higher resolution assets and the original PSP assets and get them to be closer to what the PSP assets were trying to convey, but at a higher resolution.
They're looking at it more holistically, and rather than just use all the Kai version stuff because that's the newest, therefore that's the best.
Yeah.
So really kind of cool.
Also worth mentioning, we've talked about this before, but it's worth mentioning that PH3 did recently, didn't they do the port for Nayuta, even though that's Japanese only right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like they did that port like a few months ago. It's not in English yet, but they did the port for Nippon Ichi Software, and I know they're probably gonna update it. I think they actually said that, but they did the port.
Yeah, they also Durante also mentioned, this is something I've known for a while because a friend of mine that maybe you know him, Josh. Well, Chow, you definitely know him. Jose, he's in a few like groups with Durante, and apparently. Apparently Durante actually, for some of the quality of life changes that the Geofront release on PC had, was in contact with some of the Geofront people so that they tried to coordinate and have like the quality of life features that were in the PC version that Geofront did, that he's going to do his best to make sure that they're represented or even a step above that. So that's really cool.
That makes a lot of sense. That's some really good collaboration work, and that's a lot of great networking going on for this upcoming release.
Yeah, because I've seen some people jump the gun on like the Falcom Discord or something like that. They already like start freaking out that they were gonna use the worst texture because it's a Kai version. It's like no, no, no. It's like we got this all sorted. We're gonna use the best version that we can find. It's like yeah, some people jumped the gun and attacked the attacked this port too early. So
It's in good hands. I think we all kind of agree on that.
And I think as long as you announce early that like, hey, Durante's on it and his team's on it, then that you dispel a lot of fears.
Mhm.
So it's like okay.
Now, the very last thing on the podcast docket for today is talking about the Persona Anniversary 25th announcement for February. So, no, Adam kind of had mentioned, I forget if it was in podcast or just in passing, that the Persona 25th website had a cell, basically an earmarked location for a February announcement. And we had approached the end of the month and it still kept blank. And we actually mused, was it Soul Hackers? Does that count? What was it? Adam, what did it end up being? Because I honestly don't remember.
Okay, so yeah, if you're not familiar, for Persona 25th anniversary, they're doing like multiple events throughout the year up through autumn. They originally had 7 things listed. The first thing was just like a concert in anime in Japan. The second thing that they announced was the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax port, which is coming out next month. So this was like the third thing that they teased for February. And what they announced was, sorry?
Number 3.
Oh yeah. So what they announced was that there's going to be like an event in Japan, basically from March to July, where I forget, I don't actually have it pulled up in front of me here. 1 second. They call it like a Persona 25th festival being held at Tokorozawa Sakura Town, which is like an exposition park where you can like go to a hotel and you have like Persona themed like rooms and events, and there's merch and there's a bunch of merch stuff. It's only in Japan.
There's a 1-to-1 scale life-size statue of Thanatos, Izanagi, and Arsene ready to kill you when you go.
Oh yeah, and then they talked about like new pop-up stores, new online things where you can get merch. And honestly, that was pretty much it in terms of what the announcement was.
If you don't live in Japan, then this doesn't matter.
So on the Persona 25th website, let me actually double check the website again. They actually added like a new cell for like their teases. So there used to be 7 total teases, and now there's 8. I don't know what that means, but like if they push something back or if they just literally added an announcement that they want to do. But the assumption is that the last announcement in this event is going to be like at least a tease for Persona 6. But there's several things coming before then. So, speculate away. It's like a Persona 3 port, Switch port, whatever. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, there's still 5. So 5 more things that they're going to announce. And they can be anything from events, concerts, games.
I mean, like that's for Japan. Like for the international like Persona 25 website is like fewer. So.
It's a simpler website.
Yeah. So,
but I'm going on the Japanese website.
So. Yeah. So who knows how many of this will apply to like the more internationally? Obviously, a good chunk of those announcements already don't apply to us. The only thing that applied so far is the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax port.
Was that this week also where they announced that it is getting rollback eventually?
It was like it's like a producer a message from the producer, like I think on Twitter, that says, "Hey, the PlayStation 4 and PC versions will get the rollback netcode update this summer, so it won't be there at launch. But at least it's getting rollback netcode nonetheless. But it's only for the platforms that are not on Switch. On Switch, it's delay based, ride or die on
it's
that
like
one." So yeah, I mean that's like kind of, I don't know what it is technically, but like it's so much strain on the Switch itself to implement rollback. Like even Nickelodeon All Stars only has a rollback for like 1v1 matches and switches to a different netcode if it's like more than that, I believe. And obviously, the Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle rollback isn't gonna come to Switch, only on the PS4 and PC versions. So there's something.
Anyways, the next Persona announcement is April, so get your hype trains.
What's it gonna be?
I was not expecting a Nickelodeon All Stars shout out in this podcast.
I mean, that's my memory. But
the spirit of George is strong with us.
I missed that goofball.
But yeah, Who knows what April holds? Is the April update also for the International Persona 25 anniversary, or is it just for the Japanese website? I didn't actually go check.
Let me check. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny that like the Switch will now have Persona 5 Strikers, Persona 4 Arena, and that's it.
We got the breaking news, hot news. Since we're on the topic, there's gonna be a Sega TV 2022 in Taipei live stream on March 26th. They'll have Persona 4 Arena Ultimax and Soul Hackers 2 on it.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
But nothing
Yeah.
else. Nothing else.
No.
No new Persona news.
I mean, that's the April. Come on, we just went over
The
this.
the
It's in March.
Persona English website just has one little question mark that says more announcements to come, so it's just more vague.
We just don't know. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That might be our Copium news for the day.
Yeah, there you go. Persona 3 on PC. That's what's going to be the announcement in April.
Persona
That's what I'm
3.
saying with.
It's going to be a Persona 3 remake. It's going to have everything from the FPS release, from the PSP release, all in high quality with the dancing models. It's going to be absolutely perfect, right?
Yeah, that's
No,
exactly the announcement.
It's gonna be missing the female protagonist, and everyone's gonna try to rip the game apart.
They can't do that. They've
Yeah.
been featuring the female protagonist in all the 25th anniversary artwork.
They've been showing all 6 protagonists for all the merch they've been doing. So that's 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, portable 4 and 5. They've been showing all 6. They've been showing Persona 3 female protagonists like in everything they do. So it would really be
They're really fucked
terrible
up if they
if they
did
ignored
it.
her in a remake.
No. There's the new artwork is your reward, nothing else. Well, at least the new artwork is nice for all of these 25th anniversary stuff.
Well, that kind of covers it for the news from this week. Ended up being quite a lot, as well as a lot of discussion on the new release of Triangle Strategy. So we will probably follow up with that in the upcoming weeks, as well as lingering thoughts on Elden Ring, as well as all the other March releases that we've kind of gone over, including Stranger of Paradise, and not too long from now.
Before I cut you off, Brian, there is a Grand Blue anniversary stream just about 4 a.m. today. Do you think we're gonna get relink news?
I don't think we are. They said we're gonna hear from it after anniversary. I don't think there's gonna be any relink on it.
Oh fuck!
So, I mean, there could be. Who knows?
Possible.
But I'm definitely not gonna stay up for it. Hell no! I'll wake up tomorrow morning and be like, well, there was no relink news.
Okay. Well, maybe no relink news, but how about rollback netcode? I mean, they can bully the Persona 4 arena fighting games
Good
staff
luck.
into it.
Good luck. Well, that's a lot of copium. I wish you the best, friend.
Okay. All right. Sorry to cut you off, Brian. but-
No
Go
problem.
ahead.
It's a good thing to call out because I haven't really been following. I only ever check in on Grand Blue Fantasy Relink when it's like, here's a new trailer finally, like every 2 years or 3 years or whatever. Or new artwork.
Another year.
So we'll
Hey, it's coming
see
out
if
this
any-
year, supposedly.
Yeah.
If you say so.
Someone post the image where
That's what
it's
they
going to come out in 2018. So we have all the features up on the site that I talked about: the Triangle Strategy review, the Final Fantasy 4 through 6 Pixel Remaster review, James's preview on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and Stranger of Paradise. All of the different areas that we think are being represented from the series in that game. We have a bunch of guides on Elden Ring. Alex has been smashing out almost all of those. So if you're still playing Elden Ring and you're not sure how to start or finish a side quest or where to find certain summons, chances are Alex has got you covered. So check on the site for that stuff. And then, of course, all the news from the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet announcement, the Melody of Steel's 2 surprise non-announcement, announcement. And then, of course, the all the release dates that we went through at the very end here and all the new trailers that accompanied those. You can find us on all the social media channels at Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and what am I missing? Twitter, of course, that one. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us then, stay safe and take care. We'll talk to you later.
Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions.